Welcome back to the channel. This is Trinity Storm and you are watching What If Naruto Became the Master of the Ancient Divine Beings. If you enjoy this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
When the shinobi world was still in its infancy and developing, the inhabitants of the elemental nations would summon powerful, destructive beings to demonstrate their dominance. However, after centuries of witnessing the human race engage in war after war, the eons eventually ceased aiding humanity in their conflicts and started to completely disregard their prayers. When the humans realized they could no longer summon the eons, they were quickly forgotten, their names lost to legend, and they were dubbed demons. One such eon was known as the Kyuubi no Kitsune. It was a strong creature that didn't particularly enjoy being subservient to humans. It felt that humans were beneath it and should serve the eons, not the other way around. To demonstrate its strength, it first targeted a human village, which was known as the All-Hidden Leaf Village. People in the Leaf Hidden Village were content and at peace because the conflict with the Hidden Rock had ended, and their new king, the Fourth, was guiding them into a golden age with a promising future. As he prepared to face the most despised of all adversaries, the dreaded and filthy paperwork we could see the Fourth Hokage sighing loudly in his office. After signing the final document, the Fourth turned to face the stack of incomplete paperwork and glared at it, saying, "I hate you so much, you do know that, right?" The paper did nothing but stand there, with the Fourth yelling, "Stop fucking mocking me, you god-damned bastard." At that moment, the Hokage's secretary entered with a fresh stack of paperwork that needed to be completed. The secretary responded cheerfully, oblivious to the death glare directed at her, "Hokage Sama, these reports must be filled out and taken care of by tomorrow." When she eventually saw the Hokage staring at her while brandishing a number of shuriken and pointing them in her direction, she fled, barely avoiding most of them. He started working on the bastard that was paperwork after realizing that he had missed the Fourth. As night fell, the final document was signed, the Fourth completed, and the ninja was about to head back home when a wave of murderous intent spread throughout the entire village, even to the youngest of them. With its fox-like body and blood-red eyes that glowed dangerously in the dark, the creature appeared to be able to pass the Hokage Tower and was headed toward the village. Following his recovery from his shock, the Fourth summoned all of the village ninjas to prepare for the defense of their home and charged the beast in an attempt to delay it until the Fourth arrived. Numerous ninjas fought bravely throughout the night, but it seemed to be in vain because many of them were eliminated, leaving only insects. Blood and bodies were all over the place, and those who weren't fortunate enough to die right away had to endure unspeakable pain as pieces of their bodies were ripped off and sent flying. Everything appeared hopeless as screams filled the night, but the ninja of the Hidden Leaf had triumphed over insurmountable odds before. Just before he exploded into flames and fell to the ground, a ninja yelled, "Keep the monster at bay, the Hokage gets here," and the Kyuubi began to laugh. A healthy boy with blue eyes and blonde hair had just been born at Konaha's hospital, and the Hokage was holding him. "I'm sorry, Naruto, but this is for the future of the Leaf. I hope that someday you will understand," the Fourth said to the young boy, who was merely grinning at him. The Fourth encountered Sarutobi Sandaime as he was heading out. The Fourth simply grinned and said, "Hey old man, come to say goodbye." The old man then looked at the little boy in the Fourth's arms and asked, "Is this the boy you will use?" The Fourth nodded and started to leave, saying, "Sarutobi." The Fourth said, "This thing that we are fighting is not a monster, it's an ancient being called an eon." The old man said, "It's all the book I left in your office, have fun with the paperwork." The Fourth then used the Hiraishin no Jutsu and vanished in a yellow flash. He started the signs for his demise when the Fourth was near the battlefield. He yelled, "Huan Fukoku," at the end, and as soon as he finished, he felt the death god tug his soul out of his body. "Got to act fast," he replied in a short breath, cutting his thumb and gathering the blood he needed. He then performed the signs and yelled, "Kachiyose no Jutsu," and smoke appeared before the Toad Boss summoned Gamabunta appeared. "Hey brat, what is the meaning of summoning me?" Gamabunta asked, looking around when he saw the Fourth on top of him. The Fourth simply pointed to the Kyuubi, and Gamabunta's eyes widened in surprise. "The fallen eon, fallen," the Fourth said. Gamabunta shouted, "Yah, he was kicked out of the eon's little group due to his power-hungry ways." "I see," the Fourth said, "how close do you think you can get me to it?" The Fourth simply stared at Gamabunta as if he were insane, asking, "Why the fucking hell would I want to do something that fucking crazy?" Gamabunta saw the Fourth in agony, clutching what appeared to be an infant in his stomach. Gamabunta saw this and realized what was happening, and figured out what was going on. "Yubaka, How could you even think to use that seal? Gamabunta shouted, less talking more moving, I'm running out of time. The Kyunbi was about to attack the giant frog when it turned to face the entity behind it, which frightened the fox because the death god himself was standing directly behind the fourth, slowly draining his soul. Everything was silent until the fourth said, seal, and then everything stopped in a flash of bright light. The Kyubi stood there for a moment until its body fell over, and soon after, whites began to glow around the corpse, and the fourth, the most powerful ninja of his time, started to fall, striking the boy's head. He had just cursed, Naruto. Good. Bye. And that was his last breath. The fourth had passed away. After 5 years, it was October 10th, the day of the Kyubi festival, a time for celebration, food games, and grieving for the deceased. The children were reminded of all the heroes who fought and lost their lives to protect the village concealed in the leaves. Everyone was having a good time, getting wasted, and taking in the events. With the exception of a sizable crowd of men and women, one child was being severely beaten by the adults. The 5-year-old managed to escape most of the time and was quite adept at hiding for his age, but this year the adults caught him and beat him with clubs, pipes, and other objects. The boy kept begging for his life, and the mob continued beating him while yelling for his death for all the lives he took 5 years ago. Some people were using broken bottles, knives, kunai, shuriken, and other sharp objects, and each one took turns stabbing the boy in the chest. Blood was streaming from his wounds, and the ground was covered in tears. They continued to beat him while the mob yelled things like, fox bastard, demon spawn, and, murder, filthy murder. Eventually, one man brandishing a sword said, let's end this little monster's life once and for all but first. The man repeatedly slashed the boy's chest, causing blood to flow everywhere and the boy to scream for his life. The man with the sword then raised the blade toward the boy's head, threatening to take the final blow and end the boy's life forever. The boy closed his eyes and waited for the end as the man brought the sword close to his head. However, he felt nothing happen to him, and when he opened his eyes, he saw that the crowd and the man with the sword were motionless. The boy managed to escape the villagers' clutches and saw that all of his wounds had healed. As he started to leave the crowd, he saw a boy in front of him wearing purple clothes that covered most of his face and had brown skin. The boy could only stare, thinking that he was frozen too, until he answered, hi, in a way that scared the other boy and sent him tumbling to the ground. He soon got up and replied, hello. What's your name? Mine's Uzumaki Naruto. The boy named Naruto replied. The boy with the purple hood who just stood there and replied, I know who you are. Naruto just stood there. How do you know who I am? Are you going to hurt me as well? Naruto said in fear of another attempt on his life. Do not worry Naruto, we are not here to hurt you, we are to offer you power beyond your wildest dreams. The hooded figure replied and Naruto just looked at him and then looked down at the ground. I don't want power, I just want someone to care about me, that all? The hooded figure just looked at him. You do not wish power to be given you, you just want people to care about you? The hooded figure replied, clearly shocked by an answer like that by someone so young. Naruto just looked at him and smiled. That's right, I want to be strong and so I can protect all that is important to me, Naruto said again, shocking the hooded figure, which caused him to smirk. You have shown great promise in you Naruto, and I'm sure that the others will agree with me. Naruto just looked at him in wonder to what he was talking about. Go to your Hokage and ask him about begins called the eons, then when the time is right I will come for you. And with that the boy disappeared, leaving Naruto to wonder just what the hell he was talking about, but he decided to go and ask the old man about these eon things and ran straight to the Hokage tower. When Naruto finally arrived at the Hokage's office, he pushed the door open and saw that the old man was also frozen while signing a document. Naruto walked up to the old man and waved his hand in front of him, hoping to get a reaction out of him, but nothing seemed to happen. Naruto ran straight for the Hokage tower, hoping to find out what the hooded figure was talking about and why the villagers seemed to hate him so much. Looking around, he could see that the villagers were still frozen, which made it easier to get to the tower. Naruto simply gazed at the elderly man, asking, what's happening? The old man, of course, moved after Naruto said that, saw him there, and felt his heart skip a beat as Naruto just appeared out of nowhere, jumped out of his chair, and fell to the ground, screaming. When Naruto saw that the old man was moving, he looked over the desk and saw that the man was lying on the ground, holding his chest where his heart was. What are you doing down there, old man? Naruto, how in the world did you just appear out of thin air like that? Sarutobi asked, looking up at the blonde-haired boy who had just appeared out of nowhere and given him a heart attack. Naruto concluded his explanation to the Hokage by saying, just appear, I've been here for like 5 minutes and you were frozen and then you just suddenly move like nothing happened. Frozen? Sarutobi asked him. What are you talking about, Naruto? I believe that I can explain. Turning to face the new voice, Naruto and Sarutobi saw the same hooded figure who had instructed Naruto to come to the Hokage's office. He was still dressed in the same purple outfit and wore the same hood that covered the majority of his face. It seemed strange to Sarutobi that he had never sensed this boy's chakra. He seemed to have materialized like Naruto, and he examined him to determine whether or not he posed a threat. Who are you? Before turning to face Naruto, the hooded figure simply stood there silently and asked, Did you ask him, Naruto? Oh right. Hey old man, what's an eon? Said Naruto as he initially stood there. That kid in the hood told me to ask you about it. He looked at the hooded figure and demanded to know how the hooded child knew of such things, asking, How do you know of those beings? What is your name? What village are you from? Answer me now. Sarutobi thought that he would never hear about those beings unless he read about them in history books. At the end of the old man's tirade, everything was quiet, and nobody moved until the boy finally responded. Naruto just stood there in shock, having never seen the old man like this before, and it scared him. He then turned to face the hooded figure and saw that he was not even bothered by this. My name is Bahamut. Bahamut, the Eon of Destruction, is here in my village, the Hokage said, feeling as though he were about to have another heart attack. Is he here to complete the work that the Kyuubi began 5 years ago? Before sensing the Eon's murderous intent, Sarutobi recovered from his shock and barely managed to form the necessary words. What do you want? Hasn't our village suffered enough from your kind already? What do you want with us now? Sarutobi's voice was filled with fear. Do not liken us to the fallen Eon. He was a simpleton who never merited such authority in the first place. However, that isn't the reason I'm here. He turned to face Naruto and said, I am here for him. He then gestured to Naruto. Why me? Naruto simply blinked. We have chosen you because we believe that after so many centuries it is time that we have a summoner call for our power and aid you mortals once again. Even though Sarutobi was shocked that the Eons were willing to assist humans once more and had selected Naruto above all others to serve as their summoner, he was still troubled by the question, is there another reason that you have chosen Naruto in particular? Yes, there is another reason we have chosen him, Bahamut said, glancing down at the ground. You see, we had the ability to stop Kyuubi all along, but we chose not to think that we had no reason to interfere. Naruto and Sarutobi simply continued to stare at Bahamut. It was our fault that this village suffered so much loss and that Naruto was placed into a world of pain and suffering. We ought to have intervened and taken action, but we chose not to, and Naruto suffered greatly as a result. What the fucking hell are you two fucking talking about? What the fuck does the fucking Kyuubi have to do with this shit? Why the fuck do the villagers fucking hate me so much, and what in the fucking hell is a god? Damn Eon anyway. Naruto yelled, shocking the old man and the Eon that a 5-year-old could swear like that. Naruto simply stood there, completely bewildered by what was happening, and at last decided to voice his thoughts. After Sarutobi recovered from what had happened, he looked directly at Naruto, sat down in his chair, and prepared his pipe because this was not going to be an easy task. Sarutobi took a deep breath before explaining what actually happened on the night of the Kyuubi. He explained that the Yondaime had to use a sealing technique to seal it into a newborn child, who was Naruto, because it was too powerful to be killed by ordinary human abilities. Weeping, Naruto simply stood there and said, So I really am the demon everyone says I am. No, you're not, Naruto. Naruto glanced over to Bahamut. You are not a demon, Naruto, nor have you ever held a demon inside of you. The Kyuubi was an Eon just like me but was a danger to everything, so we striped him of the title of Eon and gave him the title of Fallen and took away most of his power. When the Kyuubi attacked the village, Sarutobi was shocked to learn that it was not an Eon. However, what really disturbed him was Bahamut's statement that the Kyuubi was not sealed into him. What do you mean the Kyuubi was not sealed into him? I've seen the seal myself. What I said is the truth. The seal is empty and the Kyuubi is dead and has been dead for 5 years, Bahamut said, glancing at him. The information was too much for Sarutobi to handle in a single night, and he was experiencing a migraine. He needed a bottle of sake and some rest. Naruto simply looked at him and started to consider the possibilities. So now we are back to the beginning. So Naruto, how do you feel about becoming the first summoner after centuries? 2 questions that must be asked quickly came to mind. Hey Bahamut. Sama, I have some questions about this whole summoner thing. And what would they be? 1. Is it possible that I could take someone with me if I had to travel? And 2. Could I still become a ninja if I were a summoner? Yes, Naruto, you could still be ninja and a summoner, but I'm afraid you can't bring anyone with you on your pilgrimage unless you are a master summoner and bringing them along to be your apprentice, Bahamut said after simply staring at Naruto and wondering where those thoughts were coming from. So when can I get started, Bahamut? Sensei? Naruto asked, looking both pleased and disappointed. Anytime you're ready to leave the village, but you should ask for the Hokage's permission first, for you will need to leave the village in order to acquire the rest of the Eon's power. About to plead for the opportunity to do this, Naruto turned to face the Hokage. Alright, Naruto, if that's what you want, I'll let you leave the village as long as you occasionally get in touch with me to let me know how you're doing. Naruto simply grinned and said, thank you, old man. After everything was resolved, Bahamut handed Naruto a scroll that read, Wind. Naruto looked inside to see a map of elemental nations, and one spot in particular was glowing. That is the location of the first eon you must earn the respective, Bahamut said. Well, now that everything has been settled, I will take my leave, but before I go take this Naruto. I must caution you, though, that not all eons will welcome you. After saying that, Bahamut disappeared into thin air. Some people will put you through a test to gain their power, but you will ultimately be thankful for it. Naruto, why don't I walk you home? Tomorrow, we'll gather everything you'll need. Okay. Sarutobi asked, noticing that Naruto was about to nod off. Naruto? After noticing that Naruto was asleep, Sarutobi picked him up and took the young child home so he could get some rest for the next day. After eating 3 cups of instant ramen for breakfast, Naruto woke up to a new day in his apartment. Before leaving the village to start his journey, he went to the park to see if he could play with the other children. The word, not, is crucial, but he didn't care because he felt that today would be a good day. Naruto ran through the village after locking the door to his house, ignoring the typical glares that were directed at him. He was going to make some friends, whether these fucking villagers liked it or not. When he got to the park, he saw a lot of kids playing and laughing at the little things kids do, until they saw him and started whispering things like, "That's the demon kid, what's he doing here? This isn't a place for monsters like him, and why doesn't that freak just die?" Each of them felt like a knife in his heart, and he was about to leave when he heard someone crying. Naruto turned to see 3 boys making fun of a little girl with pink hair, which was against what the old man had told him. The other 2 boys looked shocked and were about to exact revenge on their fallen comrade when they noticed the whisker marks on Naruto's face, which recognized him. "Hey, leave her alone, you bastards," the 3 boys said, turning to face Naruto. "What are you going to do to stop us, you little brat?" one of the boys said before taking a hard punch to the jaw. One of the boys said, "It's the demon kid. Let's leave now." Before long, all 3 boys had left, leaving Naruto and the girl with the pink hair. After the girl had stopped crying, she said, "Thank you for helping me. My names are Haruno Sakura," and Naruto simply looked at her. "My names are Uzumaki Naruto," he said, smiling like a fox, which made Sakura laugh until they both heard it, "Sakura," and noticed a blonde girl running in their direction. Naruto was a little afraid of this girl until Sakura said, "Ino." He stopped some boys who were teasing and making fun of me. Please be nice to him. Ino glanced at her friend, then at Naruto, and finally back to Sakura. "Okay. Name's Yamanaka Ino, nice to meet you," Ino said, beginning to glare at Naruto. "Sakura, where were you? I've been looking everywhere for you, and who's this?" Soon, the 3 children were simply discussing their future aspirations. Sakura wanted to be a great medic nin like her mother, Ino wanted to be a great kunoichi like her father, and Naruto wanted to be the greatest shinobi ever. The 2 girls were about to ask him what a summoner was when they saw a huge beetle on Naruto's shoulder and began to scream. Naruto picked up the bug and saw a boy wearing sunglasses and a large trench coat, a boy with red markings under his eyes, and a puppy close to his feet. After giving the boy the bug, Naruto asked, "Is this your bug?" The boy said, "Yes," and the 2 just stared at each other until Aburame Shino turned to face the boy with the dog and said, "This is Inuzuka Kiba and Akamaru." "Hi. Bark," to which the 2 replied, "Uzumaki Naruto, and this is Sakura and Ino." The 2 waved to the other boys, and soon the children were playing tag with Akamaru when Naruto accidentally tripped over someone. "Sorry," Naruto said to the child with the pineapple-shaped haircut, "watch where you going, troublesome." Naruto simply looked at him and said, "My name's Naruto." The boy then turned to face him and said, "Nara Shikamaru." Naruto then noticed another boy, Akamichi Choji, eating a bag of chips. "Hey, I think I saw you guys at Ichiraku," Naruto said, looking at him. "You like ramen?" Choji said. "Like it, it's the food of the gods." Choji offered Naruto a chip. which shocked Shikamaru because he had never offered his chips to anyone, not even himself. Anyway, what are you looking at? What is so great about the clouds? Naruto asked, gazing at them. After hearing this, Naruto got on the ground and began cloud watching, and the others joined him. Uchiha Sasuke noticed this and approached them. Shikamaru simply stared at him and said, "They just float there, they don't have to worry about anything, nothing bothers them, I envy them." "What are you all doing?" they all asked, cloud watching. Sasuke simply asked, "Why?" To which they all said, "To troublesome, so explain." At this point, Sasuke simply shrugged his shoulders and joined in. Sasuke Uchiha. Naruto turned to face him, Uzumaki Naruto. After a while, they grew bored and started playing fetch with Akamaru, when he noticed a girl about his age, with blue hair, pale skin, and white pupils in her eyes. He asked, "Hey, can we have our ball back?" And the girl gave it to him. "Thanks. What's your name?" The girl blushed and said, Hyuga H. Hinata, lowering her head. "That's a nice name," she said, referring to Uzumaki Naruto. W. Well, why? Your friends L. Like M.Me? Of course they will. You seem nice and you got cool eye. Do you want to join us? Hinata asked, staring into his blue eyes, unsure of what to do. At this point, she blushed and wanted to flee, but Naruto held out his hand and said, "Come with me," and Hinata did just that. After Naruto returned to the group, he introduced Hinata to them. "Hey guys, this is Hyuga Hinata," he said, as Hinata hid behind him, saying, "She's a little shy." He then turned to Hinata and said, "Go on, say hello." Hinata said, "It's a PP pleasure to me you all." She stammered, then bowed to everyone. They all exchanged greetings, played games, and even managed to get Hinata to stop stuttering until, Hinata. Sama. Nej.ne.san. 1010.san. Lee.san. What are you doing here? Hinata appeared nervous, and Naruto didn't like it. You were supposed to come home an hour ago, what have you been doing? He asked with some anger and concern. I was playing with my new friends and lost track of time, I'm sorry Ne.san. Neji and his two friends were shocked that Hinata had been playing with friends and hadn't blushed or stuttered once. 1010 said to the girl she thought of as a little sister, "That's nice Hinata, I'm happy for you. Well, aren't you going to introduce us?" Hinata nodded and stared at Naruto, who said, "And this is Naruto.kun." Her blush went unnoticed by everyone, especially 1010, who had just teased her, Naruto. Kuun huh. Well, I think you two would make a cute couple. At this point, both Naruto and Hinata turned a deep red. 1010 approached Naruto and said, "Hello, I'm 1010. The white-eyed guy is Neji, and the other guy is Lee. He doesn't really talk that much." Neji then said, Hinata.san, it's time to go home. Hinata simply gave him a look like a puppy dog, and Neji couldn't help but say, "Okay, just a little while longer then we get you home." "Hey guys, look at the sunset," Naruto said, and they all turned to face him. Sakura said, "It's beautiful," and everyone agreed. Ino then asked, "Hey Naruto, you never told us what a summoner was." Naruto simply looked at her and said, "I forgot all about it, so what is it already?" Ino said, a little irritated, "Well, I'm not really sure, but do you guys know about the summoning jutsus that ninjas perform?" Everyone nodded because they were all going to see ninjas one day, so they all nodded. "Well, a summoner is able to summon these things called eons, which are like stronger than the Kyuubi no Kitsune," he said, and everyone was stunned until Kiba voiced his thoughts. "How are these eons stronger than the Kyuubi no Kitsune, Naruto?" "Because the Kyuubi used to be one, but they didn't like him and they kicked him out and took away most of his power," Naruto said, looking down at him. At this point, everyone's jaws dropped. They wanted to ask more, but they knew it was already time to leave. "Well, I have to get home, let's play again tomorrow guys," Sakura said joyfully. Sakura worriedly said, "Hey Naruto, what's wrong? I can't be heard tomorrow, I have to leave on my pilgrimage for the eons tomorrow," he said with sadness in his voice. Everyone looked sad after hearing this. "So when will you be back?" Hinata asked, and Naruto stared at his friends, saying, "I don't know, it could take years." "What?" was everyone's response, with the exception of Hinata, who said, "No you can't leave," and held on to him tightly. For Naruto, this was a new experience. He had never been hugged before, and he wasn't sure why it felt good when Hinata did it. Hinata simply looked at him, tried not to cry, and nodded. "Hinata-chan, I'll be back someday, and when I do I'll be really strong, and I want you to be strong as well, so don't be sad, okay? So this is where you all are." Everyone turned to see his and her parents staring at them. Just what are you doing here this late at Niga Euro? Asked the woman with the pink hair, who was probably Sakura's mother. What are you doing with Thesa Euro thing? She asked, pointing at Naruto. The children were perplexed by her statement, but their confusion quickly turned to rage. Naruto is not a demon, yelled all the children, including Hinata, surprising her parents. Naruto is funny, and kind, nice and a Euro. Went on as each child said something positive about the boy, leaving the adults to wonder if they were mistaken. The woman who resembled Hinata said, "Okay, we get the picture. But it's time to go home, okay." The children agreed, and each gave Naruto a hug or a handshake. Before long, practically everyone was ready to depart, but Hinata did something that would impact her and Naruto for years to come. She kissed him on the cheek, shocking her and her parents. They didn't say anything, but they knew that one day their future would revolve around them. Neji, Hinata. When Hinata's mother asked her daughter, "So when can we start the wedding?" As the hyugas approached the compound, Hinata flushed a deep tomato red. "Kazan," she cried, making her father chuckle and Neji smirk. Ino honey, we need to talk to you about that boy you were playing with today," said Ino's parents, who were discussing ways to ensure their daughter would never approach the demon child. "What's wrong, Kazan?" Ino asked her parents, who exchanged a look and sighed. "We don't want you going near that boy ever again, Ino. He's dangerous and we just want you to be safe, that's all." Ino looked at her parents in disbelief, asking, "Why Naruto is my friend? I spent an entire day with him and nothing happened, so what makes him so dangerous, huh?" Ino stared at them, unable to think of a response. "See, you insult my friend without any good reason. He's a great person and he's going to be a summoner," Ino said, her eyes welling, and she ran to her parents, slamming the door behind her. "A summoner? Him?" was all that Ino's parents could do as they gazed at each other. Sakura's mother told her, "Sakura, you are never to go near that monster ever again. Do you understand me, young lady? But why Kazan? He was nice and he helped me when some mean boys were picking on me again." Sakura explained, but her voice was ignored. "Are you talking back to me?" Sakura's mother yelled, causing Sakura to flinch. Sakura said, trying to catch her breath, "But that's not true. It's because of him that I meet Hinata, Tenten, Choji, Kiba, Lee, Shino, Shikamaru, Neji, and Sasuke." Sakura's father clarified, "Sakura, you must understand that boy is a bad influence. He will distract you from your studies and you won't make any friends." After a moment of reflection, Sakura remembered Naruto's earlier statement that he's going to be a great ninja and a summoner. Her parents were shocked that their daughter had made so many friends and had defied them. All they could do was sigh. "Okay, Sakura, we understand he's your friend, but give us one good reason why we should give him respect and then go to bed." Sakura then left her parents, who were in shock over the news. "A summoner of the eons, him?" Kiba. At the Inuzuka residence, Kiba's mother was lecturing him about why he should avoid the fox boy, while his sister Hana sat by and watched the entire event. "What do you have to say for yourself, Kiba? Why are you trying to disgrace our clan's name by being around that fox boy? Do you know what kind of social damage you'll get by being near him?" Kiba's mother said, looking at her daughter, "It is a big deal, Hana. We can't let a fox boy ruin our clan name." Kiba got up and said, "Stop it, stop calling him fox boy. His name is Naruto, and he's my friend and deserves our respect because he's going to be a summoner." Kiba noticed the change in her tone and simply followed her instructions. "Kazan, what's wrong?" Hana asked her mother, while Kiba's mother simply stood there and said, "A summoner that can't be." Sasuke turned to face his older brother, Onisan, while Itachi looked down at him and asked, "What is it, Otouto?" Itachi responded icily, "What's a summoner anyway?" As if it were a trivial question. Incredulous, Itachi looked at his brother and said, "Why do you ask?" "Well, that Naruto kid said tomorrow he would leave to become a summoner, so what is it anyway?" "Sasuke, I'll explain it to you tomorrow. We need to get home before dinner gets cold." Sasuke simply nodded his head, and Itachi thought, "I'll have to explain this to Atusan. He may not like this, but as long as Sasuke has a friend and a powerful one at that." Lee, Tenten, and Lee occasionally stay with them at the Rakuan weapon shop instead of returning to the orphanage, which is also known as a fucking rat hole. When asked why they went to see Naruto, Tenten's parents said that they didn't hate the boy but that the villagers would take their ire out on them if they saw Lee or Tenten close to the boy. They didn't want to see their only daughter in pain and a boy they thought was their son in pain. Lee, Tenten's father looked down at the kids, and at first they thought they were in trouble for something. Then he said, "I'm very proud of both of you." The two kids asked, "What did we do?" 1010 was clearly perplexed, and her mother interrupted, saying, "You made friends with that Naruto boy, which is great because he doesn't have many friends other than the group you were with today." 1010 was perplexed, and she asked, "Why's that, Kasen? Is it because he's a summoner?" There was a moment of silence before both parents said, "Whaat?" 1010's father asked, "Tomorrow, I think." 1010's father hurried into the back of the store where the rare weapons and special scrolls were kept, and then he emerged with a scroll that said, "Guardian. Shoji, Shikamaru." Their fathers knew better than to lecture Shikamaru and Shoji about being around the wrong people because Shikamaru wouldn't care, claiming that it would be too much trouble to find an excuse not to be friends with Naruto. And because Shoji was always able to see the positive side of things, their fathers didn't press the matter. However, Shikamaru kept having trouble, so he asked his father, "Atusan, could you tell me what a summoner is?" Both fathers appeared surprised. Shikamaru's father said, "Well, explain tomorrow, okay? Where did you learn that?" Shoji continued, "Well, we heard that Naruto was going to be a summoner, so we want to know more about it." "Naruto is summoner, man, that kid is troublesome." The boys nodded and parted ways. Our newest summoner, who most people would assume would be packing for the lengthy journey ahead, was actually eating bowl after bowl of Ichiraku ramen. Naruto simply looked up from his bowl and said, "Yes," before returning to his meal. "So Naruto, what's with all the ramen so far? You're going on a long trip or something?" "So when are you leaving, Naruto-kun?" she asked politely. "Tomorrow I leave to go on my pilgrimage to become a summoner." Naruto boosted, leaving the two ramen workers perplexed. They had heard of summoning jutsus from other ninja but never a summoner. Naturally, the old man didn't take it well, crying over his best customer leaving and making his daughter shake her head at his antics. Both ramen workers' jaws dropped to the ground when Ayame asked, "So Naruto, what's a summoner do anyway?" "Well, a summoner is a person who summons the things called eons that are stronger than the Kyuubi no Yoko." After finishing his last bowl, Naruto turned to face Ayame, who was like a sister to him and one of the few people he felt he could trust. Ayame. "Nichan, could I ask you about something?" Ayame asked, looking down at Naruto. "What is it, Naruto-kun?" Then she noticed that Naruto was blushing. "Well, can I ask you about girls?" Ayame simply smiled. "So little Naruto-kun has himself a girlfriend, huh?" Naruto's face turned a deeper shade of red, but Ayame continued to smile. "So what's her name?" Naruto eventually overcame the blush, saying, "Well, she's pretty, has blue hair, white eyes, and her name is Hyuga Hinata." After hearing this, both ramen workers' jaws hit the floor for the second time. The statement, "Thy Hyuga Hinata, heir to the Hyuga clan, one of the most famous clan in Konoha, that Hyuga Hinata," left Ayame speechless. Then, in a harsh tone, she asked Naruto, "Naruto, do you like this girl because she comes from a very wealthy family, or do you really like her?" Naruto could tell by her tone that she was serious. He thought back that he liked Hinata and that he didn't even know she was wealthy, but that didn't matter because she was nice. He then recalled the kiss she had given him and how good it felt. The response, "That's good, Naruto. I'm proud of you," answer and hope I get to meet her soon, okay, was well received by Ayame. "I guess I like her for who she is. I didn't even know she was rich, but that doesn't matter." "Okay, Nichan, thanks," Naruto said before heading to his apartment to sleep. Hokage Tower. Sarutobi was in his office talking to a man wearing all dark red, who had a heavy sword by his side, a pair of sunglasses, and a bottle of sake hanging. Sarutobi took a drag from his pipe and said, "So you're going to be helping Naruto to become a summoner and teach how to use swords as well?" "Yes, I will teach him the many roads of life, but it is his story. He has to choose which road to follow." Sarutobi handed him a piece of paper with some writing on it and said, "I see. Here are the directions to his apartment." The figure gave him a look and said, "I will." Someone beating on Naruto's front door woke him up. "Just a minute," Naruto said as he opened the door to reveal a man in all black with a dog mask on his face. Naruto simply stared at the man when he said, "Hokage. Sama wishes me to bring you to him, get dress." The man asked, "What?" observing Naruto's continued staring, cool mask, before shutting the door to get dressed. He left his house wearing blue shorts and shoes and a white shirt with the village's emblem on it, saying he was ready to go. "Hey dog man," Naruto said to the man wearing the mask, "why do you wear that weird mask anyway?" The man simply looked at him and said, "I'm Anbu." Naruto simply looked at him and asked, "What's that?" The man simply sighed. "Anbu Black Ops are ninja that do the most dangerous of missions, understand?" Naruto simply nodded his head and started to search through his backpack for something until he pulled out a map scroll. So you've been all over the place, can you tell me about this place? Naruto said, gesturing to Wind Country, where the X was, as the Anbu member simply stared at him curiously. With nothing but sand and the blazing sun, the Anbu member questioned why the child would want to travel to Wind Country in the first place. As if it were no big deal, Naruto responded, well, I have to start my pilgrimage today to become a summoner and I have to go there first. Why on earth would you want to go there like that? There is nothing there but sun and sand and enemy ninja, that's about it, the Anbu member said. However, the Anbu member didn't believe him because he understood what the child was talking about, which was nothing more than myths and legends. Naruto simply stared at him until he said, what the fuck do you know, asshole? You think that just because you some big fucking high-class ninja that you know every fucking thing about the world? Well, you were dead wrong, you bastard, because I will be a fucking summoner, and if you don't fucking believe me, ask the fucking Hokage. Naruto then sped off towards the Hokage tower, leaving both civilian and Anbu members in shock. Ignoring everyone, Naruto ran straight to the Hokage tower, bumping into the old man's office and screaming, hey old man, as he entered the village leader's office. I'm glad you could make it so we can talk about some things before you leave, but where is your escort? That fucking prick bastard, who cares, let's just talk about my pilgrimage already, Naruto said irritably, until a puff of smoke appeared, followed by the dog. Masked Anbu member, greetings Hokage. Sama. Go see you, Kakashi, but why didn't you show up with Naruto? The Hokage turned to face Kakashi and asked, Kakashi, why would you tell a child something like that when you don't even know if it's true or not? Kakashi shot back, but Hokage. Sama, what are you saying? Of course it's not true. Well, he said he was going to be a summoner and I tried to explain that it was just old stories, but he started swearing and ran off, Kakashi said. The Hokage simply took a puff of smoke from his pipe and exhaled. The summoners and the eons are nothing more than old legends. Kakashi. Yes Hokage. Sama. Kakashi said a little uneasy, I'll let you know that the boy sitting directly in front of you is the next summoner, and as for the eons, one was here last night. Kakashi was shocked by what he was hearing, recalling the time the Kyuubi no Kitsune attacked the village, killing many of his friends and taking the life of his sensei. What a minute, are you saying that the Kyuubi no Kitsune was an eon? The Hokage nodded his head, but there is more. It seems that we were wrong about the eon being sealed with Naruto. It was in fact destroyed by the Yondaime. He did manage to kill it. Kakashi's jaw would have hit the ground if his mask hadn't been in the way. Hours passed while Naruto and the Hokage discussed all the information available about the eons, explaining that each one represented a human spirit or an element, such as wind, fire, thunder, ice, destruction, honor, darkness, and trust. That each eon that Naruto summoned and grew stronger would also make them stronger, and that there would be a main summon for a summoner that would give the summoner and the eon 10 times more power when summoned. This stunned the young boy, who couldn't contain his excitement. Sweet, Naruto screamed. Naruto, I want to give you something before you leave. Think of it as a birthday present. Is it ramen? The Hokage asked, perspiring. No, Naruto, it is something for you to protect not only yourself but those precious to you as well. Naruto simply looked at the elderly man. Do you have any people that are precious to me? Old man, I swear that I will always protect all the people that are precious. That's the promise of a lifetime. The Hokage grinned at this and extended a long sword, which he then handed to Naruto. Naruto asked, unsure of who that might be, until pictures of all his new friends appeared. However, the image of Hinata caught his attention the most, and the thought of her made his heart skip a beat. Naruto took a hold of the sword, or at least tried to. The thing was bigger than him in length and he could barely hold on the thing and eventually fell to the ground, sword and all. Hey old man, what the fuck with this sword? I can barely lift the fucking thing, Naruto said while glaring at the Hokage. That sword was specifically chosen by your guardian for you to learn how to use and defend yourself on your pilgrimage. Naruto was speechless. Guardian? What the hell do I need a guardian for? I can take care of myself. Can you? A deep voice said behind Naruto. Naruto looked behind him, wondering how he didn't sense before even standing before him. Now Naruto felt nothing but a hollow shell. Who are you? Orin, your guardian. Naruto stared at him, noticing that man was tall, old, wore mostly red, kept his left arm in his coat and had a shoulder armor on and carried a sword just like his but bigger. He also had on sunglasses and could see a small bottle around his waist and could smell sake coming from, meaning he was a drunk. Naruto then looked at the Hokage. You're kidding me, right? The Hokage just shook his head back and forth. No Naruto, he is your guardian. In the past the summoners had guardians to protect them when they needed it, or high summoners who had more experience and could take care of their followers, understand? Naruto looked at the old man, knowing that he couldn't get out of this. Alright old man. He then looked towards his guardian. When do we leave? Orin looked at the boy. Tomorrow near sundown, so you can say goodbye to your friends and collect whatever you may need. Naruto nodded his head and left the office. The Hokage looked at Orin. That boy has long road ahead of him, his father and mother would be proud. Then Hokage said with a tear rolling down his face, yes, his story is just starting and yet I expect many great things for him. After cleaning his apartment and deciding to have one last meal in Ichiraku before leaving his house, Naruto was up early packing his belongings and preparing for the lengthy journey ahead as a new day had emerged over the Hidden Leaf Village. It wasn't long before Naruto was finishing his 5th bowl of ramen in under 3 minutes, but he usually finished a lot quicker than that, and the ramen stand owners knew that. Hey Naruto.kun, what's wrong, you usually finish off your 10th bowl by now. Naruto looked up from his bowl and stared at Ayame, who was like an older sister, and her father, who was always kind to him. Well, I have to leave the village to start my pilgrimage to become a summoner. Well, that's nice. What? The old man shouted, hearing that his best customer would be leaving the village. You can't leave the village, I won't let you, I chain you to the seat so that you can't leave and will have to keep buying ramen over and over again, ha 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 uff. Naruto was a little creeped out by the old man's crazy behavior until he saw his daughter standing over him with a bedded pan in her hand. Ignore him, Naruto, whatever you do will make us proud. And remember that you are always welcome here. Ayame smiled at him, then noticed someone hiding behind a building looking at Naruto. Hey, do you need something? Naruto turned around and saw someone in the shadows and felt something familiar about the aura she was giving off, then he recognized it. Hey, Hinata-chan. Hinata stepped out of the shadows with a blush on her face. Hello NN. Naruto.kun. Come on and sit here. Hinata-chan, have some ramen with me? Hinata nodded her head. Okay. She sat next to Naruto and ordered 1 shrimp ramen, but as she was eating it, Naruto was looking at her, noticing that her aura was almost the same as Bahamut. Sama. Hinata-chan, are you okay? Naruto reached over to her, and when he touched her hand, and suddenly bright began to fill the area like fireflies, and then there was a burning sensation on both Hinata and Naruto's hand, forming a symbol. On Hinata's hand there was the symbol for darkness, and for Naruto there was the symbol for destruction. Then there was the singing, Iui Nobomenu Renmiri Yojuyogo Hasatekanai Kudame. Soon a crowd began to form around the ramen stand, wondering what was happening. Soon the lights began to shape, and then women appeared from the lights. The problem was everyone could see right through her. Naruto looked at her, having an idea of what she was, but Hinata was scared of this woman. The women looked at her. Hello, young one. Hinata could tell she was addressing and was nervous. Hello. Who are you? My name, young summoner, is Anima, the Eon of Darkness. This shocked both kids. M.MENS. Summoner, you must be mistaken, you want Nordo. Kun? Hinata explained, trying hard not to sound offensive. No, I mean you, Hinta. Sama, or a summoner like Naruto. Sama, but your time as summoner is not near. I am just informing you of what is ahead of you, so until the time comes I shall bid you farewell. Soon Anima faded away, leaving a stunned Naruto and Hinata. Naruto looked at Hinata and could say one thing to fit the situation. Fucking sweet Hinata-chan, you're a summoner just like me. This is so cool. Maybe when we become genin we could be put on the same team and totally kick ass. As Naruto ranted on, while Hinata just kept thinking of the possibilities of her and Naruto on the same team, it wasn't long before she stared to blush and looked like a tomato. Soon Naruto was done ranting and noticed how late it was. Hey Hinata-chan, do you mind if I walk you home? Hinata just turned into a darker shade of red. SSS, sure Naruto-kun. The kids began walking towards the Hyuga compound, not even noticing that they were walking hand in hand. When the 2 children arrived at the compound, they were met by the extremely dangerous Hyuga Aki and Hyuga Haishi, also known as 2 very irate parents, who were waiting at the compound's entrance to scold their daughter for leaving without an escort. Hinata's mother stepped forward and asked, Hinata, where have you been? Do you know how worried we were that something could have happened to you, and what is that on your hand? Hinata attempted to conceal it, but was unable to keep it from her father. Is that a tattoo on your hand? Haishi screamed at the top of his lungs. Hinata's mother was in a different mood. Why Kami? Sama, where have I gone wrong in raising my daughter? Hinata's mother was sobbing, while Hinata herself was pure red from embarrassment she was receiving from her parents in front of Naruto. Naruto found a way to end this. Hinata-chan's a summoner. At hearing this, both parents were frozen in place until, what? It's true, I got the same type of mark when Hinata-chan's main summon appeared. This made both parents' eyes grow to the size of dinner plates. So my little Hinata is going to be a summoner? Aki replied with tear of joy ruling down her face. Heishi was proud of Hinata, expecting her to be something great, but this would far better than he could have hoped for, and hugged his daughter, telling her how proud he was of her. Naruto saw this as a good time to leave, since this was a family moment, something he didn't want to. He turned around and began to leave until two strong arms wrapped around him. "Where are you going, Naruto-kun? You can stay here for the night if you want, after all. You're one of Hinata's friends," Aki said in a gentle voice. But Naruto-kun, you're staying here for the night and that's final," Aki said, but Naruto noticed something, the same type of aura Hinata. Aki. "Sama, can I see something?" "Sure, Naruto-kun, what is it?" Naruto didn't answer, he just placed his hands on her stomach and closed his eyes and began to sense the power from within Aki, who was getting nervous. "What are you doing, Naruto-kun?" Naruto took his hand off of Aki and smiled at her. "It looks like the Hyuga family are going to have 2 children that are summoners." This shocked everyone that was nearby. Hinata walked over to Naruto. "Naruto-kun, are you sure that my Okasan is going to have a baby? Am I going to really be Oni-san?" "I'm sure, Hinata-chan." At this, Hinata hugged Naruto while Aki was bursting with tears of joys. "I'm going to have another baby, isn't that wonderful, Heishi?" "Heishi?" After noticing that her husband had fainted, Aki rubbed her eyes and said, "Not again. This is just like when he found out about Hinata." "All right, everyone, it's time for bed. Naruto-kun, you'll sleep in Hinata's room, and a servant will bring you something to wear to bed." Before long, everyone was sound asleep in anticipation of tomorrow's big day. When Naruto woke up, he realized that it was the day of his pilgrimage and that he was going to become a summoner. He ate with the Hyuga family and discovered that they had given him some supplies for the journey, including food, maps, scrolls, and other survival aids. The family even accompanied him on his departure, and some branch members even developed feelings for the boy Neji. They soon reached the East End Gate, where Naruto and all of his friends were waiting. The Hokage and the residents of the ramen shop asked him, "What are you guys doing here?" And all of them gave him a look that said, "Just wishing you good luck and to come back soon." Naruto was stunned because, for the first time in his life, people actually cared about him. Naruto nodded his head when Orin arrived with his and Naruto's sword. "Are you ready to go?" he asked. "Well, goodbye everyone, bye Hinata-chan." "Goodbye Naruto-kun," Hinata said, kissing Naruto on the cheek, making him almost faint. "Right, I just wish I could be there to see the new kid," Naruto said, a little disappointed. With a final embrace from all the girls and farewells from all the guys, Orin said, "We just might." Naruto simply looked at him and asked, "What do you mean?" "Well, if we can the eon that is in Fire Country in time, we just might make it back in time for the birth." "All right. Thank you, Orin Sensei." Naruto, the future summoner, then started his journey to become a summoner. As they approached the edge of Wind Country and the end of Fire Country, Orin was on the verge of putting his sword to Naruto's chest to silence him. "Hey Orin Sensei, how do you know so much about the eons and summoners anyway?" was the question that was bothering him when Naruto finally managed to stop talking, and Orin silently thanked Kami for it. "I guided summoners on their pilgrimages before, that's how I know where the temples are," Orin said bluntly, glancing at the boy. After giving him a quick glance and processing the information, Naruto yelled, "Holy fucking shit, zombie!" He attempted to flee, but Orin trapped him by the back of his shirt and held him in place. After realizing that he was motionless, Naruto noticed that Orin was clinging to his shirt. "You're not going to eat my brain, are you?" Naruto asked, perspiring in terror. Orin's left eye twitched as Naruto said this, and he replied, "No." After calming down and turning away from Orin, Naruto was struck on the back of the head with something. When he turned around, he saw that Orin had struck him with the opposite side of his sword. Soon after, Naruto became enraged and yelled, "What the fuck was that for you Heberic swordsman?" Orin responded, "Because you're a baka," and turned to leave. After several hours, the two travelers crossed the Fire Country border and entered Wind Country, which was incomprehensible to Naruto because there was no wind, just heat and desert. The two quickly encountered 2 sand ninja in the desert and said, "Halt, you are in Wind Country. State your name and business here and speak carefully." Orin responded, "I am a traveler with my apprentice here, the Wind Temple, so that he may become a summoner." The sand ninja exchanged glances as they heard this, turned to face Naruto, and started laughing as they attempted to say, "Ha ha ha, this kid, ha, a summoner, ha ha, come on." While Orin just stood there in a daze before responding, "I'm not joking," Naruto was infuriated. He wasn't kidding. as the two could see by their glances. One of them replied, "You need to see the cage. Sama and get his permission before entering the Temple of the Wind, as it is a scared place for our village." After examining them, Orin consented to accompany them to the Sand Village. Naruto was shocked to discover that the entire village, including the cage tower, was constructed entirely of sand, living up to the village's name when they eventually reached it hidden in the sand. After reaching the cage's door, they waited for the sign to be given to them, and once it was, they entered the Wind Cage's office. They walked in and saw a man sitting at a desk doing evil paperwork. Naruto looked at the man, who was younger than the old Hokage and had scars from years of fighting, but all Naruto could see in his eyes was lust for power and greed. Naruto didn't like this man. The cage noticed something different about the two when he looked at them, especially the boy whose power seemed to be on par with that of a cage. The cage then turned to face the man and asked, "What do you want in my village?" in a haughty manner, which is another reason Naruto didn't like him. Knowing Naruto didn't like the man and wanted to get this over with as soon as possible, Orin stepped forward and said, "Lord Cage, I would like to request that you would allow us to enter the wind so that my apprentice here can obtain the eon of the wind and become a step closer to being a high summoner." After glancing at them, the cage said, "If this is a joke, it's not funny. The summoners and eons are just legends, and they don't exist because if they did, I would like proof of them." Orin was about to speak when he saw that Naruto was clenching his hand, which was glowing and appeared to be burning. The symbol of destruction was also visible. "Orin. Sensei, there's a summoner here in the village," Naruto said in agony as he turned to face his sensei and explained what he believed was going on. Cage. Sama, was yelled at the village chief by a boy who was a year older than Naruto as he stormed into the office. "Kankuro, what do you think you're doing?" the cage asked the boy angrily. Kankuro, the boy, gave the cage a nervous look and said, "It's Tamari, sir. She was just walking when her hand began to hurt, and then these strange lights started to appear out of nowhere, and the wind symbol appeared on her hand." When the cage heard this, he was shocked because the boy's hand began to burn at the same moment as Tamari. Before he could say that there was a summoner in the village, he turned to Kankuro and said, "Bring her to me now." Kankuro nodded and left, returning shortly after with a girl who was older than him, had green and blonde hair, and was clenching her hand. Beside her was a boy who had green eyes and red hair, as well as dark circles under his eyes, indicating that he didn't get much sleep. As Tamari followed instructions to show the blonde boy her hand, the cage turned to face the girl and said, "Gaara, what are you doing here? You should be training to be a ninja." The cage looked at the redhead in disgust. After giving the cage a quick glance, Gaara replied, "I was worried about Nei-san cage. Sama, what's happening to her?" Looking at the wind symbol that was glowing a vivid blue on Tamari's hand, Naruto held it in the same manner as he did with Hinata and watched to see what would happen. Tamari felt the pain go away after he did that, and the symbol remained there even though it stopped glowing. Gaara didn't like this because he could tell that the stranger was able to help his Nei-san while he was powerless to help her. He wanted to help her, but he did nothing. Eventually, the voice of the monster inside of him started to stir and demanded the blonde boy's blood, so Gaara followed instructions. As soon as Naruto released Tamari's hand, he started to feel something around his body. When he looked, he saw that sand was covering him and preventing him from moving at all. Before long, he was covered in sand and was floating in midair. As Gaara demanded blood, nothing could stop him until he heard her say, "Gaara, stop please." The cage looked at Gaara angrily and said, "Gaara, put him down now, I order you to put him down this instant." Gaara turned to face the voice and saw his Nei-chan sobbing in her eyes as a result of his actions. His bloodlust had vanished, leaving behind only the anguish that he had once again wounded someone, the only person who truly mattered to him. Naruto soon lost the sand surrounding him, collapsed to the ground, and gasped before, to everyone's surprise, he began to laugh. As he struggled to breathe, he turned to face Tamari and grinned, saying, "You're lucky, Tamari. Sama, to have such loving siblings who worry about you like that." Everyone was perplexed by this, but Tamari and Gaara in particular. Why would he be laughing at Gaara almost killing him? "What are you talking about?" Tamari asked Naruto, glancing at him. Naruto simply glanced at Tamari and started to clarify what he meant. "Well, Gaara brought you in here looking worried that you were in pain and he could do nothing to help, and then I show up and heal your hand like it nothing. I guess he became a little jealous that I did something he couldn't to someone he cares about." Tamari was shocked to learn that Gaara had done all of this out of jealousy that he was unable to assist her. She turned to her younger brother and asked, "Gaara, was that the reason you tried to kill?" Gaara nodded his head. Surprised and grinning, Tamari approached him, gave him a hug, and said, "Thank you, Otto." Aiui Nobomenu Renmiri Yojuyogo Hosatekanai was singing as soon as Tamari finished speaking, and lights were swarming the room around her. In front of Tamari, Kutame soon saw a spectral figure. Tamari turned to face the tall man dressed in Suna attire, who said, "Greetings Teamari. Sama," before turning to face her. Tamari simply turned to face him and said, "Hello, who are you?" Tamari inquired. After glancing at her, the man grinned and said, "I am the Eon valfor, the Eon of the Wind, in your main summon." Tamari said, "What do you mean my main summon?" with a bewildered expression. To Orin's surprise, Naruto explained that the blonde baka could have thought of that. "That I can explain. You see, a summoner can summon eons to help them in battle, but a summoner summons a certain eon. That eon will be more powerful because that eon reflects the symbol on your hand," Naruto said. Valfor looked at Naruto and responded, "Very thought out, Naruto. Sama, that is exactly how things work, and I must say that it is an honor to meet you so soon, and I thank you for finding my summoner so soon too." After giving Gaara a disgusted look, Valfor turned to Tamari and said, "Tamari. Sama. I regret to inform you that the day you become a summoner, you cannot take your brother with you on your pilgrimage." Naruto simply scratched the back of his head and grinned like a fox. "Why the hell can't take my brother with me? What's wrong with Gaara?" Tamari became enraged as she turned to face Valfor. After giving Tamari a quick glance, the Eon replied, "He is the container of the fallen Eon Shukaku, that is Why." Valfor somehow knew about Shukaku and that Gaara was the container for it, so everyone was shocked to hear this. As Naruto heard this, he turned to face Gaara, who appeared to be just as alone as he had been before he had made friends and had the elderly man to take care of him. However, Gaara appeared to be alone. Even his own sister was a little scared of him, and the Kazekage didn't seem to care about him. Tamari interrupted Naruto's speech by yelling at Valfor, "I will not abounded my Otto. I don't much about summoners, and I don't care. I will not abounded the ones I love." "I was hoping you would say something like that, Tempari. Sama, and that is why I respect you," Valfor said, grinning at her. He then turned to Naruto and said, "Naruto. Sama, I will be waiting for you in the temple. Don't take too long." Everyone stared in awe as he disappeared, and then Orin turned to face the Kazekage and asked, "Now do you believe us?" With a defeated sigh, the Kazekage said, "Tamari, give our guests a tour of the village, show them a hotel, and tomorrow you will show them the temple, understand?" Tamari nodded her head and escorted them out of the office. The Kazekage wasn't sure what to believe after what he had just witnessed, and anything was possible. Naruto saw this as a perfect chance to ask Tamari a question that only she could respond to as the small group strolled through the village. With trepidation, Naruto asked Tamari, Tamari. What is it, Naruto?" she asked the boy, unsure of what he might want to know. After blushing and glancing at the floor, Naruto muttered, "Could I ask you for advice on a Euro girls? So little Naruto has a girlfriend back home. Is she cute?" Tamari asked, smirking evilly. Deeper red in the face, Naruto said, "S. She's not my girlfriend, but she is cute." Everyone's reaction to Naruto's statement was different. Tamari squealed like a schoolgirl, Kankuro envied him. Gaara was perplexed, and Orin did nothing. This made her brothers angry. "What do you like about her? Is she attractive? Does she want to be a ninja? How did you two meet?" Tamari asked him a series of random questions after glancing at Naruto. "Well, she is nice and kind, a little shy, very pretty, and has these beautiful white eyes. I think Shell became a ninja, and we met one day at the park. She was alone and I decided to ask if she wanted to play with us," Naruto said, answering each question one at a time. "So what's this girl's name?" Tamari asked him, waiting for him to finish speaking. The reply from Naruto was, "Her name is Hyuga Hinata." Everything fell silent upon hearing this, until Tamari and Kankuro yelled, "What, you've got a thing for the Hyuga hire?" Though he was aware that Hinata-chan's family was well known in both his village and the Sand Village, Naruto wasn't prepared for that response. Wondering about that, Naruto asked, as if it were inconsequential, "What's the big deal, her family anyway?" "What's the big? You have a thing for one of the oldest and most wealthiest clans known in history and you say what's the big deal?" Tamari yelled as she stood there with her mouth open. Uncertain that he might be deaf, Naruto resumed his previous statement, "Yeah, do you think you could help me come up with a way to impress her?" "Sure, I'll help you. Tell me, is there anything big going on with her back in your village?" Tamari asked Naruto, squealing once more as she looked at him. If there was one thing women enjoyed doing, it was playing matchmaker. After assuming a contemplative stance, Naruto suddenly realized, her mother is going to have a baby soon and the baby is going to be the summoner like me and her. While everyone was taken aback, Tamari started to question what Naruto could do to win her over. Then, Orin said, Naruto, I might have a way for you to impress her. Really, tell me, Orin. Sensei, Naruto said, turning to face his sensei. Naruto, Orin said, glancing at Naruto, leaving everyone in suspense, you must become a midwife for Hinata's mother. Naruto turned to face him and asked, what is a midwife? Naruto, a midwife is someone who helps a woman give birth to a baby, Tamari replied. Naruto was still perplexed, so Tamari asked, you do know how we're made, don't you? Naruto simply shifted his head from left to right, and Tamari chuckled nervously. Gaara started to wonder, nay, Chan, where do babies come from? As he glanced at his sister. Damn it, why the hell do I have to be the one to do this? Tamari thought to herself as she heard this, and then she heard, Yashamaru. She turned to the others and said, follow me. When they arrived at Gaara's caretaker's house, they all followed the blonde. Gaara asked his sister, nay, Chan, why are we at Yashamaru's house? Yashamaru. Otuji is a medic.nin, he can better explain this type of stuff than I can, Tamari said, gritting her teeth as she turned to face her brother. Once everyone had settled in, the group noticed a blonde-haired man cooking something. He turned around and asked, Gaara, what are you doing home so early? Before noticing the others behind him and grinning at them. Tamari, Kankuro, it's been a while, he said. Gaara nervously said, Yashamaru. Otuji, may I ask you a question? As she moved forward. With a smile on his face, Yashamaru asked, what is it, Gaara? Yashamaru turned white at the sound of Gaara's innocent question, where do babies come from? Gaara then asked, gee. Gaara, why would you want to know that? Orin stepped forward at that point and said, perhaps I can explain. Yashamaru was a little taken aback because he hadn't even noticed the other two until now. He asked the poetical enemy, who are you? With a hint of rage. Yashamaru. Otuji, please, the blonde one is Naruto, my friend. You're right, Gaara said tremblingly as she moved forward. Of course we're friends, Gaara, Naruto said with a fox grin, adding, just because you tried to kill me doesn't mean we're not friends. After a brief moment of fear, Yashamaru turned to face Gaara and said, Gaara, you attacked someone. Why? Despite Gaara's dejected expression, Naruto stepped forward and said, I can explain that. Naruto then described what transpired when they arrived in the village, spoke with the Kazekage, and told Tamari that she was a summoner. He also mentioned how Gaara was envious that Naruto was able to assist his sister while he was unable to, and how Tamari would have given up her summoner career if she had to give up on her brother. Yashamaru was stunned. He never thought that Gaara would experience this, and it was all due to a single child. Just who is this Naruto anyway? He asked himself, wondering if he would have to find out later after responding to the boy's question. Yashamaru turned to face the children and said, so you kids want to know where babies come from? Both of them nodded. Sitting in a chair close by, Yashamaru simply sighed and said, well, when a man and a woman want children, they. The two boys appeared to be about to throw up after Yashamaru finished explaining how childbirth was performed and how to be Naruto's midwife. Naruto became so upset that he turned to Orin and asked him in a tense tone, you expect me to do that to Hinata, Chan's mother? Orin simply said, hi, to him and walked away as if it had never happened. As a bright red Tamari stood behind him, Gaara, however, was responding differently. He turned to face Yashamaru and asked, does that mean someone is going to try that on Chan someday? Tamari was ashamed of her brother's behavior but somewhat relieved that they would take care of him in that way. Yashamaru nodded his head and responded, and Gaara became enraged, saying, I'll kill them first, when he mentioned that Kankuro had approached him and asked him, mind if I join you? After checking the time on the clock, Yashamaru turned to face Naruto and asked, Naruto. Sama, would you like to spend the night? Naruto consented and spent the night in the spare room. Gaara and his siblings met Naruto in the morning, had breakfast, and then headed to the Wind Temple. After an hour or so of walking through the desert, Naruto and the Sand siblings finally arrived at a tower bearing the wind symbol a euro, just what they needed. As they entered the temple, they noticed 4 statues arranged throughout the space, one of which was the current Kazekage. There were also wind jutsu rooms and a sizable door in the center of the space. Orin glanced at Naruto. This is it, Naruto, you must enter the cloister of trials to prove that you have what it takes to be a summoner. Also I must tell that the cloister is a puzzle you must solve and there is an item you must find in there to obtain a special eon. I understand, Orin. Sensei, Naruto said after giving him a quick glance before going through the door of the cloister of trials. After Naruto, Orin, and the others entered the cloister of trials, they looked around but saw nothing but a room with 2 green glowing glyphs on 2 of the walls. Naruto gave Orin a somewhat irate look. Naruto yelled, "Hey Baka swordsman, what the hell, there's nothing here, damn it." Orin did not respond. Naruto remembered what Orin had said earlier because he knew he would not receive a response at this point. Naruto approached the wall with a glyph and touched it, saying, "Naruto, you must keep in mind that the cloister is a puzzle you must solve." The second glyph then penetrated the floor and revealed a stairway that led downward. The others were heading down when they noticed Kankuro standing terrifiedly at the entrance. "What's wrong?" Gaara asked, glancing at her older brother. "Nothing, except that this is just like in those horror movies where dead people are walking around the bottom of dungeons and stuff," Kankuro said, looking down at Gaara. Gaara turned to Tamari, who cheerfully replied, "Gaara, think about those movies you watch like Dawn of the Dead, Resident Evil, and Return of the Living Dead." Gaara was perplexed by Kankuro's tone and turned to face him. After that, Gaara started to comprehend, and Naruto decided to enjoy himself by grabbing the glyph sphere. Everyone stared at him as Naruto grinned and said, "Orin, there's dead and walking. I don't see why you're so afraid of zombies, for we've been with one the entire time." Everyone turned to Ruan at this point, and he said, "It's true." Everyone's reaction was different. Kankuro let out a high-pitched scream, while Tamari and Gaara continued to poke him to check if he was still alive. Naruto continued. Naruto saw a small overhang on the wall as he came down the stairs and went to investigate. As he got closer, he saw some writing next to the glyph and read it. It told him everything he needed to know about the sphere and its function. After completing his reading, Naruto took a look at the glyph sphere and proceeded down the stairs, where he saw a large iron door with a hole in the middle. Naruto placed the sphere in his hands and initially nothing happened, but then the door abruptly opened to reveal a hallway. Even though Naruto had to agree with Kankuro that the hallway was eerily eerie, he grabbed the sphere in the doorway and carried on anyway because he had to know he had to do this. This could be like the door, Naruto thought aloud as he inserted the sphere into the hole and waited to see what would happen. The symbols vanished and the wall rose up to reveal another room with another sphere called the Destruction Sphere. Naruto had been walking down the hall and seeing nothing until he noticed more symbols on a wall and a hole in the wall. Naruto would have taken the sphere, but instead he chose to explore more of the cloister. He found more glyphs on the walls as he went down the hallway, but these felt different, so he went to touch the wall and then heard something coming from around the corner. When Naruto ran to the location of the noise, he discovered that a wall had opened up once more, revealing a room with a sphere in the middle and numerous lights coming in and going out of it. Naruto stepped forward to discover that the sphere was known as the Wind Sphere and took it. After he did so, all of the lights ceased to flow and vanished. Then Naruto went to the pedestal he had seen earlier, put the Wind Sphere inside, and pushed it to the wall with the wind symbol on it. When he arrived, he looked around and saw nothing, nowhere to go, and nothing left to do, which infuriated him. "What the fuck, there's nothing left that I can fucking do, damn it." Naruto looked at the pedestal after finishing his little tirade and kicked it, causing it to move forward. As he did so, he glared at it and screamed, "That's what you get for doing nothing, you fucking statue bastard, a euro, fuck that hurt." He jumped up and down, holding one foot, probably due to the pain. Had it not been for the pedestal he kicked colliding with a wall instead, causing a bright light to flash, Naruto would have continued, but the brightness forced him to close his eyes, and when he looked at it, the light began to fade and the wall vanished. As Naruto glanced at another room with a pedestal, the wind symbol behind it, and a light in the middle, he would have gone to his father, but then he thought of the other sphere he had passed earlier. Naruto looked back to where he had left the sphere and examined it, looking at its name at Euro. The Destruction Sphere Euro. And thinking, who comes up with these names, for all I know this thing will blow up. In the hopes that nothing would happen, Naruto swallowed and reached for the sphere slowly. He was about to reach for it while holding his breath, but he let out the breath he had been holding and wiped the perspiration from his head before looking down at the sphere and thinking, "That's it, I was expecting some kind of boulder to come at me or something." When Naruto's heart rate had slowed, he heard a loud, "Naruto" from behind him. Naruto turned around to see Tamari and everyone else laughing, and he became angry, asking, "What was that for? You almost gave me a heart attack." Tamari simply smiled innocently at Naruto, saying, "I don't know what you're talking about." However, Gaara looked at his sister in confusion, saying, "But Chan, you said you wanted to scare Naruto." Naruto asked everyone as he made his way to the brightly lit room, "What exactly took you guys so long to come down here anyway? Kankuro turned to face his sister and said, "Shut up, Tamari." "I wasn't scared." Tamari turned to face Naruto and said, "We had to convince my scared baby O to do nothing would happen." Naruto simply sighed and thanked the kami for letting him be the only child and allowing him to skip ahead of the group and not have to deal with such things. Naruto placed a sphere in the wall to watch what would happen once everyone had arrived at the room with the lights. Then he noticed a loud explosion coming from around the corner as the light left the sphere and followed the wall into a corner, where it vanished. When they heard this, everyone rushed to the location of the noise and discovered that a wall had been demolished, with some of the light from the adjacent room guiding them there. Naturally, Naruto was drawn to the treasure chest behind the wall in the room. "Treasure!" he yelled, running for the chest and opening it to reveal a wind symbol that appeared in the chest, vanished, and then reappeared on Naruto's body. Naruto said, "Hey Orin. Sensei, what the hell is this?" as he pointed to Orin while glancing down at the symbol that had appeared on his body. Simply glancing at Naruto, Orin clarified, "I told you that there was an item hidden at the end of the puzzle and this is it. That means with this I get the Eon Hinata. Chan's supposed to get right." Naruto grinned, a little disappointed by what he was hearing. "I thought it was going to be something cool," he said, looking down. "If it makes you feel better, the symbol is just one of many you will need to get in order to obtain a Euro Anima," Orin said, nodding at the boy. This caused Naruto to start jumping up and down and say, "Okay, I can really impress Hinata Chan." Tamari found this amusing and responded, "And ask her out on a date." Naruto repeated, "And ask her out on a date," at which point he covered his mouth and blushed as Tamari started laughing. While this was going on, Gaara looked perplexed and asked his sister, "Nay, Chan, what's going on? Why is Naruto all red, and what's a date?" Tamari turned to her brother, deciding he needed to go out more, and started explaining what she was talking about. "Gaara, a date is something you do with a girl you like." Gaara nodded, and Tamari continued, adding that most guys won't admit they like a girl, which is why Naruto is red. Gaara continued with the proceedings despite her continued inability to comprehend. They all agreed and returned to the pedestal after Kankuro said, "Can we get moving? All the romance in this room is going to make me lose by breakfast." Naruto pushed the pedestal into the symbol after they got there, causing it to sink into the earth. Another white light appeared after the pedestal had fallen all the way into the garden, blinding everyone except Orin, who was wearing sunglasses, and Naruto, who saw it coming. When the light went out, everyone turned to see what appeared to be an antiquated elevator system. Because he was a little anxious about what would happen next, Naruto gave everyone a nervous look. When Orin noticed this, he put his hand on Naruto's shoulder and said, "The choice to proceed is yours. This is your story, and only you can write it." Naruto turned to face his sensei with renewed bravery, saying, "Arigato sensei," before boarding the elevator. The group had entered a small room with stairs leading to a door after the elevator had touched down. Naruto gazed anxiously at the door as Orin said, "That door leads to Chamber of the Faith, the resting place of the Eon of the Wind." Orin saw this and assured him that everything would be fine, saying, "Don't worry, you wouldn't be summoned if you weren't meant for it. The Eon will judge you to see if you are worthy of being its summoner." Naruto inhaled deeply before moving forward toward the door, his heart thumping against his ribs as he contemplated the possibility that he would truly become a summoner. "He's not going to die in there, is he?" asked Tamari as the door opened, and Naruto entered, grinning back at the other and saying, "Wish me luck." The door then closed, and everyone turned to face Orin. Orin simply looked at her and said, "No, but he is going to be needing some sleep." After entering the Faith's chamber, Naruto turned to see a large glass dome on the floor. As Naruto approached to examine it, he noticed a statue of a big bird inside, and then he heard a voice singing. Shortly after, a figure emerged in front of yesterday's Eon. Naruto simply nodded and asked, "So what is going to happen? Is there a dance or a chant I have to do?" The Eon simply grinned at the young boy and said, "No Naruto, all you must do is stand there, I will do the rest." The Eon turned to face Naruto and said, "Greetings Summoner Naruto, I see that the time has come." Naruto stood there, prepared for anything, staring at the Eon. When he said, "I know I'm ready, I have to be ready, I need to be strong enough to protect the ones that I consider precious to me," Naruto turned to face the Eon. Valfor asked, "Are you sure you are ready for this Naruto? Once you do this there will be no turning back?" Valfor grinned and said, "Very well Naruto, you have earned this." Then, he flew directly at Naruto and entered him. After that, Naruto collapsed to his knees and started to gasp for air as the Eon's power surged through him. Valfor's voice resurfaced after Naruto stood up. "Naruto, you have taken the first step, but a time of darkness is coming, you must find all the summoners before the time of sin arises." Everyone was staring at Naruto when he left the room. The words, I did Ida Euro I have become a Euro a summoner, caused him to faint. After 3 days our young hero appeared to be half dead as he slept in the hospital bed in Suna. Gaara would visit Naruto every day to check on him, but nothing had improved. Additionally, the majority of the staff occasionally refused to take care of Naruto because he was friends with Gaara. Most people would have given up after the 3rd visit, but Naruto eventually opened his eyes. Naruto squinted his eyes as he surveyed the room because of how bright the lights were. A voice said, "Oh good, you're awake." Naruto turned to see a nurse staring at him. In a kind manner, the nurse said, "Your friends were worried about you and have been here every day to see if you're okay. I'll get Gaara-kun and his siblings, you just rest," she said, and departed. Shortly after she left, Naruto simply glanced around the room and noticed flowers and wool cards beside his bed. Shortly after, Naruto heard footsteps approaching his room and saw the door fly off its hinges, shouting, "Naruto!" as it went. Naruto turned to see Gaara and his siblings leaping at him as they burst through the door. They each gave him a slow embrace when they got to him, which made Naruto blush. Gaisa Euro Lita Euro Goa Euro Kanta Euro. Breath, was all Naruto could manage to say. After the Sand siblings understood his words, they released him. Naruto looked at Gaara and grinned, saying, "No problem, Gaara. I've been in hospitals for longer than 3 days, so don't worry." Gaara was the first to ask, "Naruto, are you okay? You've been out for 3 days straight, and we were worried." Everyone was a little taken aback by what Naruto was saying, and Tamari had to ask, "Naruto, what are you talking about?" With a slightly dejected expression on his face, Naruto said, "Well, in my village, people thought I was the container of the Kyuubi no Yoko. Hi, Gaara they did, but they had their reasons. They looked at me for an outlet for the lost loved ones, but they were just afraid, that's all," Naruto said, looking at Gaara, aware that lying would not get him anywhere. Everyone gasped at this, and Gaara turned to his blonde-haired friend and asked, "Did they hurt you and try to Euro kill you?" "They were just afraid, that's all," was what Gaara thought Naruto had said as she looked at him and wondered if he would be accepted if people weren't scared of him. Yashamaru had come into the room while Gaara was thinking about this. "Hello Naruto. Sama." Naruto waved to Gaara's uncle and said, "Hello Yashamaru. Sama. I hope you're doing well." Yashamaru grinned at the boy and said, "I'm fine, Naruto. I came here to check on you and to tell you that you will begin training to be a midwife once you were cleared by the hospital." The news that his training would soon start made Naruto smile, but it also made him wonder, "Yashamaru. Sama, where is Orin? Sensei?" Looking at Naruto, Yashamaru said, "The last time I saw him, he was at the bookstore reading." Naruto twitched and asked, "It wasn't an orange book that said Icha Icha on it?" Yashamaru appeared to be thinking deeply and responded, "Hi, I believe it was. Is that a problem, Naruto?" Sama. Naruto was now furious, saying, "Hi, the problem is that my so-called sensei is a zombie, a drunk, and a hentai as well." At a bookstore in Suna, Orin was absorbed in the book, laughing like a schoolgirl, and his face was slightly flushed. Everyone appeared perplexed at this point, and Yashamaru questioned, "I don't understand, Naruto. Sama, how is Orin? Sama a hentai?" Naruto got out of bed and explained, "Because I found one of those in Hokage.og.san office and all it had in it was naked men and women doing wired stuff to each other." At this point, everyone except Gaara's jaw dropped to the ground, and Kankuro was soon lying on the ground after being struck by Tamari. "Tamari, why did you do that?" Naruto asked. The reason Tamari turned to face Naruto was, "Because I found those kind of books in his bedroom under this mattress." Yashamaru had to put an end to this before anyone found out, or worse, Tamari would start searching his house for his books. He turned to Naruto and said, "Naruto. Sama, as soon as you are cleared, you will be allowed to leave and begin your training." Naruto pouted, "But I find Yashamaru. Sama, I want to go and try to summon my eon." Yashamaru looked at Naruto and shook his head back and forth, saying, "No, Naruto. Sama, you must stay in bed and regain your strength, for if your body does not recover properly then you will suffer heavy damage to it." Yashamaru concluded his brief speech, expecting an answer, but he glanced at the children and snuck out, saying, "Fucking hell." Children were reportedly rushing through the village in an attempt to reach an open area where they could issue the summons. Gaara had to speak up while the others were doing this. "Naruto, Yashamaru said you had to stay in bed. Why are we running around the village?" Naruto smiled at Gaara and said, "Come on, Gaara, you don't always have to do what people tell you, sometimes you need to break loose and have fun." Gaara looked at Naruto, perplexed, and said, "Have fun? he felt the perspiration drop behind his head. Naruto turned to Gaara's siblings, who simply blinked at this. The children prepared for the summoning after they had reached a clearing close to Suna Park. Naturally, they weren't alone. The children in the park were intrigued as to why the Suna siblings were there as soon as they spotted them with a new blonde child. Having no idea what to do, Naruto prepared himself, wondering if it would be like a standard summoning as Hokage.og.san had previously explained. As instructed by Hokage.og.san, Naruto gazed in order to gather chakra. Naruto started shaping chakra and mediating in ways he didn't know how to do. Before long, Naruto sensed that his chakra was changing and that something else, like a foreign chakra, was also forming in his body. However, how could someone have two sets of chakra? According to what Hokage.og.san had told him, chakra is a type of spirit energy that people possess, but since they only have one, how could he have two? Perhaps he could summon it if he channeled both his and the eons chakras, unless it was the eons chakra that was also inside of him. Slowly, Naruto began to unite the eons chakra with his own. The entire village felt the blue and white chakra that surrounded Naruto's body shoot left and right into the air. Some believed that Shukaku was being released, at least that's what the Kazekage believed, so he sent all of his ninja to kill whatever the issue was. However, when they arrived, everyone was unsure of what to do because what they saw was entirely different from what they had anticipated. Because there was a young boy in the clearing who was totally absorbed in the blue and white chakra. Naruto's eyes, which were the same color as the chakra encircling his body and had no pupils just an empty void of chakra opened just before anyone could take any action to stop what was happening. Everyone was terrified of this, especially Gaara, who was terrified that his friend was dying and was going to run in when he was stopped by Orin, who turned to face Gaara and said, "Let him finish," to the young boy. Naruto exclaimed, "Rise valfor," as the chakra started to enlarge and a final wave erupted. I'm not very good at explaining things, so if you've played Final Fantasy X, you'll understand what I mean. Orin then threw Naruto his sword, which he caught without looking and started to summon. He first raised his sword as he extended his arm with the sword in his left hand, surrounded by 4 green orbs with a yellow light in the middle. Lights soon surrounded his body, and Naruto was encircled by a light purple seal that was rotating in a clockwise direction. 4 round circles soon emerged, shooting 4 lights into the sky while rotating counterclockwise with seal. When this happened, everyone turned to look at the clouds that had just formed in the sky. To their surprise, they saw lights moving in a circle in their direction, connecting, and spreading a white light across the sky. Then, in the distance, a large object appeared out of the sky. The crowd watched as the enormous creature approached them at a breakneck speed, getting closer and closer to the small gathering. As the creature from the sky approached, many people prepared for whatever would happen next. Eventually, they were able to make out what appeared to be a giant bird. Everyone could only stare at the strange creature that had appeared as it approached and landed on the ground next to Naruto. It was large and unavoidable, with thin skin wings, a long purple tail, skinny legs, and red feathers on its neck and lower body. It also had a white cover over its face and something with 3 spikes between its wings and body, with 3 golden rings on the left spikes. When Naruto reached up and started to brush his hand on the bird's feather, the strange bird looked around at the people and at Naruto, who had just escaped his trace. The two of them stared at each other until the bird purred, indicating that it enjoyed the attention. Everyone was stunned to hear Naruto's smile and the words, "Nice to finally meet you, valfor," when they realized they were in front of one of the fabled eons. Some of the crowd members were afraid of what to do with a creature that was rumored to be able to easily wipe out entire armies of thousands. They wanted to end with the children, but they didn't see that as possible. As one child yelled, "I call it first," as he ran to Naruto at stop speed in front of the other kids, they saw it as an opportunity to have some fun instead. When the child reached Naruto, he said, "Summoner Naruto. Sama, could I please be the first to rid your eon, please?" Naruto appeared to be about to respond, but another child pushed the first one aside and said, "No, let me rid it, Summoner Naruto. Sama." The children continued to swarm around Naruto, pleading for a rid on the eon until Gaara appeared, and one of them saw this and exclaimed in a terrified voice, "It's a Gaara." The other children turned around to see the monster of Suna. Naruto was perplexed as to why the children would be afraid of Gaara. He was about to respond when one of the children yelled, "Get out of here, you monster." Another child added, "We don't want a filthy beast like you," and a third said, "Ya, get away before the summoner kills you with his eon." Gaara looked down and started to leave, tears welling in his eyes, when he heard someone say, Who the fucking hell said any of you fucking bastards could go near my eon danm it? At this point, Gaara turned around, as did the other children, who were also perplexed as to why the summoner would aid a monster like Gaara. One of the more foolish children turned to Naruto and asked, "Why would you protect that thing, Summoner Naruto? Sama." Naruto then made a fist and punched the child, saying, "Don't ever talk about my friend like that fucker." Everyone else in the room was thinking, where does a little kid learn to talk like that? At least that was what the adults were thinking, and a few of the children were thinking, "Naruto, you really do consider me a friend a Euro arigato." Naruto then turned to his friend and said, "Gaara, come on, the sky is awaiting." Gaara nodded and ran to his friend. Before long, Gaara and Naruto were on Valfor's back preparing for takeoff when Gaara said, "Naruto, hold on." Naruto looked back in confusion, but Gaara turned to face his siblings, and Naruto grinned, saying, "Hey Tamari, Kankuro, come on, there's plenty of room." Tamari grinned broadly, and Kankuro appeared to want to go somewhere else, but Tamari pulled him to the bird. After all three were on, Naruto turned to face Valfor and asked, "Is this okay?" Valfor nodded, spread his wings, and lifted himself off the ground. He then began to fly through Suna, speeding through the air as it steamed over rooftops. The Kage was working on his paperwork when he saw an odd bird approaching his window. Before he could close it, the bird flew through one window and out the other, but the wind flung all the papers around the room, and a loud "no" could be heard all over the village. The children, however, were having the time of their lives as Tamari laughed uncontrollably, Kankuro sobbed and begged for it to stop. Gaara smiled slightly at what was happening, and Naruto yelled for Valfor to get faster and higher. He was thinking, however, "Hinata-chan, I can summon now, I be back soon, so please Euro wait for me." Back at the Hidden Leaf Village, Hinata, Ino, and Sakura were discussing what life would be like once they were in the academy when they all felt a tremendous gust of wind. At that moment, Hinata heard someone say, "Hinata-chan, Euro wait for me." At this point, Hinata got up, whispered, "Naruto-kun," and grinned, thinking of the boy she truly wanted to see again. After gaining the ability to call forth Valfor, Naruto spent months training with Orin, learning wind jutsu, and spending time with Gaara, with whom he became even closer. It was because of this friendship that Naruto was able to prevent Gaara from slipping into darkness and losing himself. Flashback: it was the start of Naruto's midwifery training, and he was heading back to his room to rest when he saw that the person there was not Orin, but rather Gaara. The red-haired boy looked at his friend and saw that he was green in the face, and Gaara joked, "Hey Naruto, I take it you enjoyed your training?" Naruto just glared at Gaara, shouting, "Shut up," without equating Gaara's sense of humor. Once Naruto had finished his ramen and had recovered from his anger towards his friend, who was simply sitting on the couch grinning, he turned to his friend and asked, "Why are you here, Gaara?" Gaara simply grinned and said, "I came to see how your training was going." At this point, all of the things Naruto had learned about childbirth returned to him, and he couldn't help but run to the bathroom, losing the ramen he had just consumed. After losing his dinner, Naruto emerged from the bathroom, a little pale but okay. He could see that his friend was still there, but he also noticed that it was almost midnight. He looked at Gaara with a slightly irritated expression, saying, "Gaara, no offense, but it's late and I want to get some sleep, you should as well." Gaara scowled in response, saying, "Naruto, I am not able to sleep because if I do the demon inside me will take over and devour my soul." Naruto slapped himself because he had forgotten about Gaara's fallen eon inside of him, saying, "Gomen Gaara, I forgot, but it's not that late, I guess I could stay up for another hour." Gaara was relieved that his friend wanted to spend time with him. Gaara and Naruto sat on the roof of the house, gazing up at the moon and the stars. Both boys were thinking about something that made them happy, and while Gaara was happy to see something so peaceful in such a harsh world, Naruto was thinking about Hinata and how much he missed her. However, as both boys were enjoying the lovely night sky, they failed to notice a masked man behind them who was prepared to send a kunai directly at them. The man threw the kunai at the two children, expecting the blades to kill them, but it didn't work. Gaara's sand had blocked the weapons, so the kunai failed to hit either of the two. Naruto, however, saw the blades approaching at the last second and used the wind to create his own shield, blocking the kunai. The attacker tried to attack again, not realizing that the two had such strong defenses, but before he could do so, a wall of sand had gathered around him, encircling him and crushing him until he felt his arm and legs crushed, and the crushing continued. While Gaara was doing this, Shukaku noticed that his container was becoming bloodthirsty and whispered a few things to really get the ball rolling. Gaara was enjoying himself and crushing the assassin when he heard someone say, Gaara that enough. Gaara was angry because all he wanted was to be with his friend, but another assassin, most likely sent by his father, was sent to kill him and Naruto. When Gaara heard this, he halted his activity and turned to face Naruto, who was wearing a Suna headband, indicating that he was a ninja from the Sand Village, and he had a worried expression on his face. Gaara, you can stop now, he can't do anything. Alright. Dipshit, let's see whom the fuck you under that fucking mask. Naruto grabbed the mask and pulled it off, gasping at what he saw as Gaara stared in disbelief. Yashamaru was sitting in a pool of his own blood. Naruto continued to glare at the man who was from the same village and was attempting to kill one of their own. This brought back many unpleasant memories of his home. When the two boys saw this, they simply stood there blinking to make sure their eyes weren't playing tricks on them or that they were practicing genjutsu. Unfortunately, neither of the two theories was accurate. Instead, Yashamaru simply continued to stare at the two without showing any signs of regret or guilt. Yashamaru simply stared at the blonde boy and said, Ida euro was a euro and a euro ordere euro from a euro thea euro cage. Naruto continued to glare at the man who was clenching his fist and asking merely, why? When Naruto heard this, he began to clench his teeth because he had never liked the man since he had first met him or because he had been telling him to avoid Gaara lately for his own good, but this made it worse. Gaara, on the other hand, was smiling and had a hopeful expression on his face. So you didn't want to attack me, you were just ordered to euro, right? Yashamaru simply stared at the boy and said, No euro, I willing took the mission to kill you filthy demon monster. His hope was gone, and hearing this was killing him from the inside out. I lost my sister, the only person I had ever really cared about, because of you, Gaara. Yashamaru continued to glare at Gaara. But even though I tried to look at you with love, I just couldn't help but hate you, Yashamaru said to Gaara, who was powerless to do anything but listen to his uncle's terrible truth. After another moment had passed, Yashamaru coughed up blood and realized that his time was almost up, so he looked at Gaara and said, Gaara, you should know something else. Gaara then looked at his uncle again and said, Your name was given by your mother out of her hatred for this village. The name Gaara means demon that only cares for itself. Yashamaru's breathing slowed, and he removed his vest to reveal dozens of paper bombs already active on his body. Naruto saw that Gaara was in such a deep emotional state that he was unable to do anything but jump in front of the explosion. A loud explosion sounded throughout Suna, and many shinobi rushed to investigate the cause. When they arrived at the explosion site, they saw the demon Gaara, summoner Naruto, Sama, and the charred remnants of the explosion. One Junin ran to Naruto and asked, Naruto, Sama, are you all right? When he got close enough, he noticed the damage. Naruto had 6th degree burns on both hands and bits of bone were visible due to the damage. The Junin looked at Gaara and saw that there was no physical damage to his body, but his eyes were obviously traumatized. When the Junin noticed that both boys were seriously ill, he yelled, Get some medical nins here now. A dozen medical nins quickly showed up to inquire about the extent of the damage, and after one of them informed them that Naruto Sama was seriously ill, the nins hurried to him. One of the doctors was examining Naruto's burns when he said in agony, Stop. The doctor looked at Naruto and said, Naruto Sama, I must treat these burns because they could be completely fatal. Naruto simply ignored him and managed to say, Maya euro in. Injury is a euro area euro nota euro I am. Gasp. Importante euro help a euro Gaara. Naruto Sama, I don't understand why that demon would be more important, said the bewildered medical nin. Don't fucking call him that, he is my friend and a summoner. Naruto glared at this. The medical nin simply said, Hi, Naruto Sama, and gave the order to have Gaara taken to a mental ward as soon as possible. I order you to help him and give him your best treatment, understand? While Gaara was being carried away on a stretcher by the medical nins, Gaara glanced at Naruto's hands. Gazing at Naruto with lifeless eyes, Gaara asked him in a monotone, Naruto a euro why? Naruto smiled warmly and said, Because a euro you area euro my friend, before fainting. End flashback. Naruto had to wait for his eyes to acclimate before opening them again after waking up with a bright light shining in them. Naruto glanced around the room shortly after everything was in order and saw that it was a hospital room. While wearing a hospital gown, he observed that his hands were completely bandaged and immobile. He looked around the room after noticing his hands and saw that someone was already present. Naruto's sensei Orin slept in the chair beside his bed. To relieve himself, Naruto got out of bed and went to the bathroom, not realizing that Orin was awake. Naruto, who doesn't particularly enjoy hospitals, saw that Orin was still asleep when he emerged and was about to leave the room. The words, "You know you shouldn't walk around with your ass hanging out," made Naruto jump. They were spoken by his sensei. He turned to face the red-clad swordsman, who was simply grinning at him, relieved that his apprentice was unharmed. With a slightly irritated expression, Naruto asked his sensei, "How long have you been awake, Baka?" "Swordsman?" Orin simply grinned and said, "I wanted to make sure you were okay. It's been a little over an hour." Hearing this, Orin put on a straight face and said, "You realize that you could have been killed last night, right?" Naruto simply grinned and said, "It's nothing too serious for a future summoner to handle." Naruto then looked down and said, "Hi, I do realize that, but..." At this point, Orin grabbed Naruto by the front of his shirt and got in his face, saying, "The problem, you little brat, is that you could have been killed and you're not taking this seriously, damn it." Naruto didn't get a chance to finish because Orin interrupted him, saying, "There is no excuse for your actions, and I had to protect Gaara." Naruto responded, "You were reckless and could have gotten killed." Orin's voice was a little angry. Naruto was a little alarmed to hear this because, despite their extensive relationship, Orin had never behaved in this manner toward him. "Naruto, you must realize that finishing your pilgrimage is very important. You must live and gather all the eons," Orin said, releasing Naruto after he had calmed down. When Naruto heard this, he could tell that Orin was omitting something significantly significant. The question, "Sensei, what else are you not telling me?" was directed at Orin by Naruto. Orin simply sighed upon hearing this. He knew he would have to inform the boy sooner rather than later about his preference. "Naruto, I wanted to tell you this later, but I guess I have no choice but to tell you everything. About Sin, the espers, and what will happen to the other summoners if you die," Orin said with a serious voice. As Naruto listened to all of this, he was terrified that he would not comprehend Orin's meaning of Sin or espers or what would happen to everyone if he died. He was about to ask when a nurse knocked on the door and said, "Oh, you're awake. The Kage asked me to tell him when you were awake." Naruto called out to her as she turned to go, "Excuse me, but is Gaara okay?" The nurse turned back to Naruto and smiled, saying, "Gaara Sama is fine, just a bit stunned about what happened, but seems fine, you can see him a little later." Naruto felt a great sense of relief upon learning that Gaara was doing well. Orin chose not to ruin it after noticing Naruto was in a good mood. Later, he would warn them of the dangers. Naruto grinned and dressed nicely, saying, "If you're up for it, we can go see how Gaara is doing." Upon consulting with a few nurses, they unexpectedly directed me to Gaara's room. They quickly located it, went inside, and discovered Gaara sitting motionless on his bed, staring at the wall. Naruto was concerned about his friend, who was merely sitting there and not answering any questions. While attempting to elicit a response from Gaara, he became aware that Tamari and Kankuro had entered the room through the open door. After noticing the somber expressions on both of their faces, Naruto turned to face Gaara and said, "I'll be right back, Gaara, okay?" before he and Tamari and Kankuro entered the hall. When Kankuro asked, "So what happened last night?" the three just stared at one another. Naruto looked at them, trying to think of the right words to say. "Ida Euro, it was Yashamaru, he tried to kill Gaara and me." The two were left stunned. That's not possible, Yashamaru loved Gaara, he took him in and raised him, he loved him," Tamari said, sobbing. Kankuro asked, "Why did he do it?" after glancing at Naruto to see if he was telling the truth. Unfortunately, he could tell. There was silence for a moment until Naruto said, "The most important thing here is to make sure Gaara is okay." The two siblings agreed and returned to the room to see Gaara after Naruto rubbed his temples and said, he said he blamed Gaara for the death of his sister. He also said he was given a choice to take the assassin and he took it. When the three of them walked into the room, they discovered that Gaara had not moved and was still sitting on his bed. Gaara did nothing but sit there while Tamari held him as she sat on the bed and embraced him, saying, Uto, everything will be alright, I promise." After an hour, they still hadn't heard back from Gaara. Everyone blinked a little when Tamari tried to be nice to him. Kankuro attempted to assist by telling awful and pitiful jokes, but all he got in return was a slap across the face from Tamari and odd looks from Naruto. The children knew they were not making any headway with the little red head, but they didn't want to give up. They had made the decision to take a break, but as soon as he saw Gaara, a doctor entered the room wearing a frustrated expression. He turned to go after writing something on his clipboard. The doctor merely sneered, "I've done my job and it's not like that little demon is going to anything about it. Hell, that thing is better off brain dead." On hearing this, Tamari wanted to kill the man and Naruto, but Gaara did nothing, but Kankuro had a wicked idea. "Hey Naruto," Naruto said, turning to face Kankuro. It's that same guy who tried to grab Tamari's ass when we walked in here, Naruto realized. Hi, it was him. Tamari's face was flushed, and the doctor appeared too exhausted and stunned to defend himself. He never even had a chance because a loud die was heard, and the doctor was hard slammed into a wall by a wall of sand. When Naruto saw what had happened, he turned to Kankuro and said, I can't believe that worked. Kankuro simply grinned and gloated, I had a feeling. However, Tamari's demonic killer intent was not detected by the two boys during this time. You damn bakas! Tamari yelled and began mercilessly beating the two boys to death. It will be censored due to Tamari's extreme use of violence and graphic content, which is simply too obvious and frightening to write. The writer shudders as he looks behind the censor. How can you bend someone like that without breaking anything, man? The two boys nodded. Hi, Tamari. Sama. Tamari was standing there, glaring at two bloody, scared, and shitless boys, saying, don't ever use me for something like that ever again, you little hentai Sayuro, got it. They were oblivious to the movement behind them. Chan, and all three children turned to see Gaara sitting there, looking confused. Everyone almost took Gaara's life away from him in that moment, but he kind of enjoyed it. Gaara started to question why he was in the hospital after everyone had let go of him and he had had enough air in his lungs. He started crying and blaming himself for what had happened after recapitulating what had happened the night before. Gaara looked at Naruto in confusion and said, what happened to Yashamaru was not your fault. What happened to your mother was not your fault. What happened to me was not your fault. A Euro, got it. Naruto sighed and placed his banged hand on Gaara's shoulder, saying, look, Gaara, let's get some things straight. Gaara nodded in agreement with Naruto's statement. The children started talking about what they should do next after everything had been resolved and Gaara's mental state had been calmed. Gaara could still be used as a weapon for the village, which was the main point of the presentation. The Sand siblings simply signed, the nobles of Wind Country have turned their sights to other villages to do their work, but Tamari's statement left Naruto perplexed. Why would they do something like that? Naruto asked. However, Kankuro gave him a straightforward response that Naruto understood, budget cuts and politics. Tamari coughed after this, drawing the boys' attention once more. The main problem has actually been the Leaf Village. Naruto simply glared at her as he said, the Leaf Village has been doing really well even after the last war. The nobles of our land have been spending their funds on Leaf Shinobi. Naruto nodded his head, indicating that he partially understood, and because of this less funds have been going to sand and cutbacks have been made along with attempts for more powerful weapons. Naruto started to understand, like Gaara. Kankuro asked, so what the plan? Naruto replied, we tell them that we didn't get a look at the assassin face. Tamari looked at him and said, so basically we lie. Naruto nodded, hello, we lie. As long as we say nothing, and from what I've seen, as long as Gaara stays in control of himself. The Kage went and tried to kill him anymore if he believes he's in control. The Sand siblings nodded, approving the plan. However, the Teme Kage had just entered the room after they had accepted the plan. Naruto. Sama, it's good to see that you are alright. The man glared at Gaara and put on a fake smile. Your concern is most appreciated, Kage. Sama. Naruto also put on a fake grin. The two continued to stare at each other, and it seemed as though the room temperature had dropped. Naruto wanted to kill this man, but he knew that wouldn't work, so he said, Naruto. Sama. I must ask, why are you in Gaara's room? You should be resting in your room far away from him. I was just checking on my friend Kage. Sama and talking about things about the village, Naruto continued, maintaining his fake smile. The Kage looked perplexed at this, asking, and what were you talking about then? Naruto then put on a genuine smile, saying, things like politics and budgets and other boring things. Kage. Sama. The Kage nodded when he heard this and started to walk out of the room. Before leaving, however, the man turned back to Naruto and asked, you didn't happen recognize who the assassin was, did you? Naruto responded, no, his face was covered and it was too dark to see what his headband was. The Kage simply nodded, but he also appeared to be bothered by something. There is one thing I would like to know, Naruto. Sama, the Kage said. Naruto nodded, indicating that he understood. There are some reports that you stood in front of the blast in Gaara, so how did you survive? The Kage asked. Well, when I got the ability to summon valfor, I noticed that I could do things that involve wind with ease, Naruto said, rubbing the back of his head and grinning like a fox. Everyone in the room blinked in confusion as Naruto said, I can advance wind jutsu with ease and move heavy objects using wind with ease as well as flying. Everyone in the room gawked, with the exception of Tamari, who who simply grabbed Naruto by the collar of his shirt and exclaimed, "You can fly." Naruto simply laughed nervously, saying, "Well, more like hover, but that's not the point. The point is I think when you get an eon you get more than the ability to summon." That fool has failed and nearly caused the demon to become loose, the Hokage thought as he left the room after everything was in place and started to walk down the hospital hallway. The Sand Leader was soon back in his office going through his paperwork when he noticed something different. An alliance from the Hidden Sound Village? An attack won't probably kill him and it might make things worse, so it's best to make sure Gaara's is under my control. That day, for some reason, the assassinations ceased, giving Gaara some time to relax. Tamari and Kankuro were able to spend time with their brother and begin practicing wind and puppet jutsu. Naruto, on the other hand, was able to complete the most training because he was, as Kankuro puts it, a fucking sponge with jutsu. His midwifery training also improved when he assisted 5 women in giving birth, one of whom gave birth to triplets. The 4 children had grown quite close to one another over the course of several months, but when the time came for Naruto to continue his pilgrimage, Orin said it was time to leave, but Naruto wanted to stay a little while longer, so he had to be tied up and carried out. Suna entrance, the blonde hired hero, his sensei, and a group of people are seen at one of the few entrances to the Sand Village. Among the group were a few politicians for Suna, such as the Hokage and his children. Gaara, Tamari, and Kankuro were also present to bid their friend farewell, as well as a few families to whom Naruto had served as a midwife. After all, he had blessed the children of those families, so he was regarded as a holy man. The blonde summoner left to start the next phase of his journey after everyone said goodbye with tears in their eyes, and he joked that Gaara would have a few fangirls soon, which Gaara didn't really understand. He left with the promise that they would meet again someday. A few days later, Naruto and Orin had been traveling non-stop for a while when Naruto lost it. "Hey Baka! Sword!" he yelled, but was quickly silenced with a loud whack, "OWW." Orin then looked at the boy and asked, "What is it, Naruto?" While pretending nothing had happened. Naruto simply glared at the man and asked, "Where are we going to anyway?" Orin simply looked at the boy and said, "Rice Country," which wasn't good enough for Naruto. "So what eon is in Rice Country then?" The only response from Orin was, "None," kept walking, leaving Naruto furious. Naruto was now becoming irritated, saying, "Well, so Rice Country doesn't have eon, but where are they going?" "Why?" Naruto simply nodded and proceeded to pry after Orin simply signed and glanced at a nearby shrine. "Well, stop at the shrine to rest and pry and I'll explain," he said. The two sat in front of the shrine eating when Orin said, "We need to go to Rice Country to gather some intel and help the people there." Naruto was perplexed by this, and Orin continued to explain that the villages in Rice Country had historically always supported summoners. Naruto had finished prying at the shrine and approached Orin, who was eating some sweets that he had obtained somewhere. When Naruto heard all of this, he just sat there thinking, "Even though I'm still a child, people have looked up to me with hope." Orin looked at Naruto and became a little worried when he realized that Naruto was actually thinking and sharing important facts about the summoner's history. They saw them as waves of good fortune for the future, and we can all find important facts of the summoner's history. The two soon passed the Rice Country border after a few hours and were traveling to a small, seemingly bustling but serene village. Naruto was listening to what the people were saying and could make out things like, "Is that Orin? Sama, Orin. Sama has reappeared along with a new summoner, Sir Orin," and other things. The two had noticed that the villagers were giving Orin strange looks and whispering things while they were strolling through the streets. People were bowing to the two, and some of the girls were blushing at Naruto, as they continued to stare at them. Soon after, the two encountered an elderly man dressed in aristocratic garb. Both Naruto and Orin bowed in response to the old man's greetings. "Greetings Orin. Sama, and to you as well, young summoner. Please call me Mucho, and I must say what an honor it is to finally meet men like you in our village," the old man said with a smile. Naruto turned to see two girls, both older than him, fleeing from the villagers at high speeds as Mucho continued kissing his ass, but was soon interrupted by the sounds of villagers yelling, "Stop those two thieves!" They were not paying attention to their destination when a red-haired girl slammed into Naruto. Everyone in the crowd gasped in shock at what they had just witnessed. While Naruto glared, "You fucking bumped into me, you fucking red-haired bitch." The girl simply shook her head, ignoring the pain radiating from her head, and glared at him, saying, "Watch where the fuck you're going, you dumb fuck." The gasps increased, and some even fainted. The two continued to glare at one another, but were soon distracted by the voice, "Tayuya. Sama." They turned to face the other girl, who had long black hair and was holding one of her hands as if she were in pain. and he noticed that his own hand was hurting too. "Kin, does it still hurt?" The girl named Kin simply nodded her head when she saw this. Tayuya's features softened. Naruto chose to take action upon witnessing this and approached Kin. When Tayuya saw this, he simply glared, "Hey fucker, what the hell do you think you're doing?" Naruto simply ignored her and grabbed Kin's hand, making the blue symbol for trust appear on her hand. Many of the villagers were perplexed by what had happened after everything was finished, but Tayuya was simply furious and sprang at Naruto without hesitation. "What the fuck did you do to Kin, you bastard? And you better tell me the fucking truth or you dead, got it?" She glared at him while she was on top of him on the ground. "How dare you attack Naruto? Sama, like that you shall be executed for your actions, you thief," said one of the noble's bodyguards before Naruto could respond to her question. "That will not be necessary, Mucho." "Sama," the noble said, looking at Naruto in confusion. "You wouldn't want any harm to come to another summoner and her guardian, would you? Mucho simply stared at Naruto and said, "Naruto. Sama, if this is a joke, it's not in any way humorous." Naruto then glared at the man, asking, "Why would I jest as something as important as this? Do you think so little of me?" The man shook his hands in the air, saying, "No, Naruto. Sama, of course." Mucho then turned to some of his bodyguards and said, "You two lead the two women to be dressed for dinner in my home." After Naruto reassured them, the two nodded and took Tayuya and Kin away. The night after, Naruto and Orin, who had his arm wrapped in a sash, were both wearing formal kimonos at Mucho's house. Mucho was wearing his own formal kimono at the dining hall. He was accompanied by Kin, who kept staring at Orin and flushing, and Tayuya, who appeared out of place and angry to be wearing such clothes. They quickly started eating and savoring the food, particularly Tayuya and Kin, who hadn't had a satisfying meal in a long time. After about an hour, Tayuya began to glare at Naruto, who had to ask, "Is there a problem?" Tayuya slammed her hands against the table and gave him a cold glare. "What the fuck are you after?" Naruto simply blinked. "After. Yaw, after? As in, are you after to make me and Kin your little fuck toys, or are you after to sell me and Kin as slaves? Which is it?" At this point, both Naruto and Kin started to flush. "I was trying to help you and the summoner over there," he said, pointing to Kin. Tayuya didn't think he was a true believer in the summoner concept after hearing this. "Bullshit. This whole summoner thing may work on the villagers, but I don't buy a word of it." Naruto grinned. "I'm not asking you to believe, but in a few years you will have no choice but to believe." Tayuya was just snorting. "And why at that?" At this point, Naruto simply gave the girl another of his smiles, which made her want to beat him to death, because your friend there happens to be a summoner herself. Tayuya simply looked at her friend, who was simultaneously on cloud 9 and gazing at those she was seeing stars. Mucho was having a great time when he coughed, which caught everyone's attention. Naruto nodded his head in agreement when he heard the statement, "Naruto. Sama and friends. Even though this night has been very entertaining, I do really believe that it is time to discuss why you came here." Naruto swallowed and declared himself prepared after Mucho cleared his throat and said, "Naruto. Sama, it's time for you to learn about the espers, the enemies of the eons, as well as sin, a weapon of horrific power." Mucho started. At the beginning, the old man was surrounded by people who were waiting for him to share his story about previous summoners, but he simply stopped. Everyone scolded Mucho for doing nothing at first until, "What were we talking about again?" First to react, Tayuya said, "What the flying fuck, old man, you started this fucking story and fucking forget what you were talking about, you fucking senile bastard." Mucho gave the girl a blank stare and asked, "Did you say something?" Other than Tayuya, who simply grabbed one of the nearby knives and pointed it at Mucho. Everyone face flapped once more. Red-eyed and panting, she said, "He must die." But before the enraged redhead could act, Kim commanded her to, "Tayuya. Sama, stop." They asked Mucho to begin his stories after they had successfully calmed Tayuya, which was not an easy task. Mucho cleared his throat, took a swig of sake, and started. When the gods first appeared, the universe as a whole came into being. After establishing heaven and hell for humanity, they made our world so that we could see the life they had produced. They saw right away that their creations were both fascinating and dangerous, so they made the espers to help keep an eye on them. Belias, the Gigas, was their first creation. The gods created the Scion of Darkness, the guardian of the Holy Realm, to oppose the transcendent Lawgriff, the Scion of Light. Because of his appearance, he was dubbed the Gigas. A man and a monster united into one. The Gigas challenged the gods and lost because they were seen as having made a mistake and were not given their intended role. His element was allegedly on fire. Mateus the Corrupt came next. La Habrea, the abyssal celebrant and scion of light, is opposed by the scion of darkness, who rules and guards those who reside in the underworld. He gave in to greed during his reign, and the darkness stole his heart, turning him into a corrupt and malevolent person. Then, out of cowardice, he bound a goddess of the domain of ice and challenged the gods by using her as a living shield. He was defeated by their power and screamed as he fell into the depths of hell, where he would be held captive for all eternity. Shemazai, the Whisper, came after him. A hybrid of a horse and a woman, Scion has complete control over the souls that prowl the underworld. The martyr Elgiorm, founder of light, is in contrast. Even though she had previously been a guardian of the gods, Shemazai approached her and whispered about the gods' secret flaws when Ultima declared her rebellion. Then, without the gods' permission, she came down to teach men about evil and destruction. She was stricken down and bound because of this. Hashmal, the bringer of order, came next. The gods gave Scion the ability to control and influence the laws of the world and use his divine authority to bring humanity into harmony. Made in opposition to the Scion of Light, Fandaniel the Protector. He sided with Ultima in her fight against the gods because he wanted to bring order to everything. His strength had been depleted by the 1,000 Years' War, and he fell into the raging conflagration. Regretfully, Famfrit, the Darkening Cloud, followed. Even his creators disapproved of the monstrous, darkly clouded form of Famfrit. Scion opposed to Holy Queen Emralith, Scion of Light. Tajus was broken and sealed with armor laced with wards following a great battle. He is known as the Darkening Cloud since there is no light inside his armor. As a sign of chaos and waste, men fear the rain that falls from the black clouds that ooze from the Ginat Ewar. The god's next creation was the Wroth, Adramelech. In contrast to Dudalefen the Benevolent, Scion of Light, he is the emperor among the Scions, capable of destroying everything with a single, vengeful blow of his fist. Despite being created by the gods to subdue the fiends that roamed the otherworld, he turned against his creators because of his great strength and intimidating appearance, which attracted the fiends to him. Adramelech gained notoriety in the otherworld, where he led a horde of fiends against the gods before ultimately losing. Then there was the impure, Cuchulainn. Unlike Nabriel's the majestic, Scion of Light, Scion was created to purge the world of its impurities by swallowing them with himself. But after swallowing it all, the once beautiful Cuchulainn turned into a monstrous creature, a god of filth, and turned against his creators. Wherever his feet fall, all life withers to dust. The world was more corrupt and full of impurities than even the gods could have imagined. The gods later created Walker of the Wheel and Chaos, the tutelary deity of the holy crystals that the gods created during the Great Making. Designed as a counterpoint to the Scion of Light, Matron the Chastizer. He entered the world of men and was engulfed in the chaos that was there. As a walker of life's wheel, he was lost, died, and reborn innumerable times before facing the gods who had so fated him. He purifies his heart and mind by sitting in meditation on the Una pedestal until everything that has logic and order is reduced to nothing. Zalera, the Death Seraph, was possibly the worst thing that the gods had made. A heretic Scion who sought to seize the souls of all living things for himself by enveloping the world in evil energies. Made as a counterpoint to the Angel of Truth, the Scion of Light, and Emmet. Selch. His soul was tarnished by the curses of those who raged against the heavens, and he rebelled against his creators after taking a shamaness, one of the god's servants, as a hostage. Originally, he was tasked with judging men upon their deaths. Even in defeat, he still holds the shamaness in his right arm and uses her death wall to call forth the soul of darkness to carry out his commands. The gods also created Zeramis, the Condemner. A scion of holy order, a condemner of criminals, and someone who values the law above all else. Designed as a counterpoint to Poshtero, the Scion of Light and Nightstar. In order to condemn the guilty, he transforms his intense, enduring hatred for those who violate the law into a living darkness. He eventually became more concerned with condemnation than with following the law, and because he was so corrupted by hatred, he attempted to put the gods themselves to death. He became known as the Condemner, and he fell from grace as a result. The oldest of the gods' creations is Exodus, the Judge. Sal. As he watched, unseen, unknown, his attachment to the world dwindled and faded until it was as nothing. It was fitting that he would want to make the world, too, as nothing. However, he fell in the war against the gods and was thwarted, imprisoned as punishment for his heresy. He was the most ancient of the Scions, created in opposition to Halmard, the Arbiter and Scion of Light. Prior to her betrayal, she was tasked with guiding souls to heaven and assisting in their reincarnation. Known as the High Seraph for her angelic wings of glimmering gold, but it was on wings of deepest black that the tainted angel Ultima rose against the gods. Since her fall, her heart is without light, and it is impossible to know. After all the creations were made, the gods felt they knew how to create the perfect being Ultima, the High Seraph. Mucho took a moment to catch his breath after that, and while everyone else sat there dumbfounded, unable to believe the story he had just heard, Naruto wouldn't believe it if it weren't for everything he had been through. Naruto turned to Mucho and asked, "So, is that everything, Mucho?" "Sama?" Naruto simply blinked as the elderly man said, "No, because there is one more esper far more dangerous than all of them." Zodiark, Keeper of Precepts, was the last esper to be created just before Ultima. He was the strongest of the scions created by the gods, and because they feared his growth, they kept him a child. His strength is so unstoppable that everything is twisted and pressed into oblivion by him. He is the only one who creates the laws governing everything, administers punishment in lieu of the gods, and has absolute authority. Naruto was taking this the hardest of all of them after being able to see the power of an eon when he summoned valfor. After Mucho finished his story about the espers, everyone just sat there to review and process what they had just heard. He looked at Orin to see if any of this was true, and Orin nodded his head as if he could read his thoughts. At that moment, Naruto was really scared and unsure of what to do. Before Naruto could ask any more questions, Hyuga said, "Hey, before you go on, old man, let's get something to eat first, some of us are fucking starving." Naruto rubbed his temples because he was experiencing a severe headache from hearing this, and he glanced at Mucho, who had a look on his face that would have told you there was more to the story he was telling. Hyuga looked at the blonde with a great deal of murderous intent, saying, "Fuck ya blondie, some of us are fucking starving here and want to fucking eat something." Naruto simply glared at the red hair, saying, "This information could be very vital towards the future of everyone and you'd rather stuff your face than hear it." After saying, "Just don't complain about how fat you're going to get later on," Hyuga smirked at Naruto's victory and sat back down, crossing his arms over her chest and saying, "Fine, go ahead and pig out." Without a second's hesitation, Hyuga leapt across the table and beat Naruto into a pool of his own blood. With the exception of Naruto, who was forced to eat most of his food through a straw because Hyuga had broken his jaw, everyone else followed Hyuga's example and ate after she had finished nearly killing Naruto. Once they had eaten enough, Mucho took another swing of sake and cleared his throat once more. Following their fall from grace, the espers became extremely enraged and directed their wrath towards humanity. This period of history was known as the Time of Darkened Skies. The lands were filled with death, blood, and screams as the espers tortured everything they could find and enjoyed it. Many villagers would pray to the gods and even to demons to come and help them while the espers were torturing everything they could find. Eventually, their prayers were answered a euro. Not by the gods, but by the demons of hell itself a euro. And these 9 monsters were known as the Biju. When the people saw these monsters, they genuinely believed that the gods had answered their prayers because they were messengers of the Heaves who had come to save them. However, they soon discovered that the Biju had been sent to destroy the espers, and they paid no attention to who stood in their way. Every battle between the demi-gods was always a draw, with many innocent bystanders caught up in the devastation. The people would constantly pray to their gods for help, but nothing would ever happen, and their prayers would always go unanswered because the gods did nothing out of fear that their own creations had abandoned mankind. Years passed, and the demi-gods would fight and destroy everything in the surrounding area, causing constant suffering to the innocents. The only exception to this rule was Kami. The gods would only ignore her and say she was too young to truly understand the grand design, but Kami understood what was happening and made the decision to help mankind, even turning back to her own kin and traveling to the earth to do so. Kami begged the other gods to help the humans who were forced to suffer because of their mistakes. Knowing full well that she couldn't defeat the espers or the Biju alone, Kami descended upon the earth and offered to help the poor souls in any way she could. She then searched the earth for people who were unique in their own way to help her in battle, and she found 10 people who had gifts that made them special. The 10 chosen people agreed to help Kami, and in exchange they sacrificed their lives to become immortal beings of great power who would serve mankind. When Naruto heard this, he turned to face the elderly man and said, "Eons?" Mucho simply nodded, saying, "Hi, those 10 people became the Eons." As a result, the Eons were created, and they started a war against the espers. Since the espers were once human and therefore weak, they honestly thought they could easily defeat the Eons. However, they were mistaken, and they were easily defeated because they were unaware of how powerful the human spirit was. The Biju were prepared to fight the Eons after they had taken care of the espers, but they were different from the espers in that they understood how dangerous the Eons were and obeyed their orders. When the Biju expressed no desire to fight the Eons agreed to leave them alone as long as they did not hurt innocent people anymore, and the Biju protested. At first, everything between the two was good, but as time went on, the Biju grew too hungry, and the eons became resentful and broke their promises. The eons then declared that the Biju were too corrupted to be permitted in their midst and that they would be sent back into the flames of hell. So that's why they're called the fallen eons, Naruto said, turning back to face the elderly man. Mushi nodded his head, but he was perplexed. Naruto. Sama, you seem to already know that. Could you explain how? It's because they fell into hell when the eons banished them from our world. Naruto nodded his head. My eon informed me that Kyuubi no Yoko was a fallen eon when we first met. Back in Suna, one of them is also sealed into Tamari, the summoner of Valfor's younger brother. Well, that makes sense, Naruto. Sama. Now, if you don't mind, I need a bit of rest for a moment. That was all Mucho needed to hear before getting up and walking away for a while. Kyuuya rose and left the room, taking this as a break. Kin followed her because she didn't want her friend to be alone. Kyuuya outside near one of the koi fish ponds, the young redhead was attempting to discuss what was going on and what would happen to her if she continued to listen to this nonsense. She also couldn't stop thinking about what would happen to Kin if she committed this summoner nonsense, as well as what would happen in the future between them. While the redhead was thinking about this, she failed to notice Kin approaching from behind and saying, Kyuuya. Sama. The girl turned around and saw Kin standing there, smiling nervously, saying, it's nice night, isn't Kyuuya? Sama. Kyuuya knew the younger girl wanted something because she could always read her like a book. What do you want, Kin? Kyuuya asked, putting on a bored look. After hearing her name, Kin inhaled deeply and asked, Kyuuya. Sama, are we going to go with Naruto? Sama to the Leaf Village? Kyuuya simply blinked at the girl and said, I don't know about you, but I'm not going anywhere near that place. Kin gasped in shock, which perplexed Kyuuya. Why aren't you going, Kyuuya? Sama. The redhead simply snorted, for one thing I don't believe in all of this summoner bullshit. When Kin heard this response, he looked disappointedly at the ground. As Kin tried to form the words she needed to say, well, if I am a summoner like Naruto. Sama, I would need a guardian like all other summoners. Kyuuya twitched her head in confusion and asked, why are you asking anyway? Kyuuya simply glared at Kin and said, why the hell would I want to be your fucking guardian? As I seem to recall, you started following me around when we first met. When Kin first met Kyuuya, she was unable to deny this. She admired her strength. The two have remained together up to this point because Kyuuya didn't seem to mind when she began to follow the redhead around. Kin quickly snapped out of her reverie, realized how stupid she had just sounded, and grinned, saying, Gomen Kyuuya. Sama, I don't know what I'm thinking. I'll see you inside. She turned around and left as quickly as she could, tears streaming down her cheeks. She didn't notice Kyuuya's agonized expression as she was leaving, which revealed that she was only thinking, what should I do? Naruto is back. After a while, Naruto and the others returned to the dining room with Kin and Kyuuya. Mucho started telling the rest of his story as soon as he saw them. Humans therefore started to rebuild after the Biju and espers fell from grace. They gradually started to create what some would refer to as a utopia with the aid of Kami and the eons. After determining that she was no longer required, Kami returned to the heavens and gave the eons free reign as a thank you for their assistance. Kami anticipated that the other would treat her with a great deal of respect for her accomplishments when she returned to heaven. Unfortunately, that was not the case because the other gods did not appreciate Kami's actions. They thought she was careless and stupid and should not have gotten involved. As you can imagine, Kami felt deeply insulted and offended for doing what she thought was right, even though the other gods didn't agree. As time went on, people coexisted peacefully. They grew, founded numerous villages, and traveled to many previously uncharted areas. To honor Kami and the eons who assisted them, the people of these lands started erecting temples and statues. Mucho paused his story to turn to face Naruto. Naruto. Sama, you mentioned that you had already received one of the eons. Is that right? Naruto nodded, and Mucho grinned. Those people built the temple where you received your eon. Anyway, back with the story. Everyone nodded, indicating that they understood. The other gods were not pleased with the growing number of worshippers of Kami and her eons. They started to harbor animosity toward Kami and her eons as well as the humans who had decided to leave them. After that, things became violent, and eventually, Kami and her eons and the ancient gods were engaged in a civil war inside heaven. After a protracted and brutal battle, Kami emerged victorious, assuming control of the heavens and enabling the eons to coexist with humanity without fear of her former family. For a while, everything seemed ideal, but the eons were too busy fighting the ancient gods to realize what would happen to them after they passed away. The essence of the ancient gods was supposed to be absorbed into the universe when they were killed. Instead, in order to create sin, the espers somehow managed to capture the spirit of their original creators. As Mucho was saying that, a chilly wind came out of nowhere and the room became extremely cold. Everyone thought the same thing when they experienced this. That's just creepy. Sin. I think I heard the eons talking about that. Just what is it anyway? Naruto responded. Ever since he first heard the eons discuss it, he had been curious about it, and it made him feel a strange kind of fear. When Mucho began discussing it as though he had witnessed it firsthand, Naruto noticed that he appeared somewhat uncomfortable as well. Additionally, he saw that Orin appeared tense about the matter, and Naruto was aware that he had witnessed Orin's death. Mucho had a dejected expression on his face as he gazed down at the table, as though he were being made to recall a terrible experience from his past. Everyone arched an eyebrow when Mucho eventually raised his head, inhaled deeply, and said, "Sin is death." Mucho started by explaining that every eon has an element like the espers, whether it be fire or ice or lighting or even earth, they all have an element to their power. After hearing what everyone was thinking, Tayuya questioned aloud, "So what the fucking hell made this fucker so fucking special?" As I was saying, each eon and espers was meant to represent a certain element. However, sin was created to represent death and nothing else. When it existed, no one was safe. It would destroy entire countries with one attack and move on like it was nothing. People would cower in fear at Euro. And for good reason at Euro. Because it spared no one in its path. Mucho continued, ignoring Tayuya's profane language. As if the icy fingers of death were outstretched, everyone who heard this felt a sudden chill. Naruto turned to Mucho and asked, "Is this thing still around?" "No, sin was destroyed by the most powerful summoners of the time," was said after a lengthy period of silence. They sacrificed their lives to prevent it and the espers from hurting anyone else. They were heroes, and this village will always remember them. Mucho stated that it was clear from the sound of this voice that he had experienced regret and pain in the past. "Hey old man, how the fucking hell do you know so much about this shit any fucking way, huh?" Tayuya felt compelled to voice her own opinion after hearing this. Everyone gave her a strange look, which irritated Tayuya. "What the fuck are you all staring at?" Everyone said, "Nothing," in response. Mucho simply ignored Tayuya's foul language and turned to face her, saying, "I have just been around a long time, Tayuya." "Sama." Tayuya simply blinked and gazed at him, attempting to determine Mucho's exact age. Dinner had continued into the night, and everyone would listen to Mucho's stories about previous summoners and their amazing feats. Some of the stories were heartbreaking, full of amazing feats and terrible people, while others made them laugh. It was a very good night. Mucho told them about some of the greatest summoners in history, such as Lady Yuna, a summoner who used her eons to gain incredible power, which enabled her to spar Kami herself. Mucho asked the young summoner and guardians, "So why don't you tell me about yourselves?" after he had finally run out of stories to share. When the children heard this, they became apprehensive, and Mucho could tell. Kin went first, saying, "There isn't much to tell, I'm an orphan who lived on the streets, until I saw Tayuya fighting some of the local thugs and winning, and that's where I started to follow her." Tayuya then simply stated, "There is nothing interesting, and that's that." Naruto took a deep breath and smiled. "Well, I guess I'll go next. My name is Uzumaki Naruto. I'm from the village of Konaha. I like to eat ramen, spend time with the old man, learning about the eons, training, and Hinata-chan. My dislikes are vegetables, people who hurt others for no reason, and drunk swordsmen." He turned to Orin. "Hey Naruto, who this old man you were talking about anyway?" Tayuya asked after the others gave Naruto odd looks. Tayuya blinked and said, "You call the leader of a shinobi village an old man?" Naruto simply stared at the red and said, "He's the Hokage of my village." Tayuya simply smiled evilly and said, "You must really have some balls, kid." Naruto simply nodded his head and laughed nervously, "Thanks, I think." Kin attempted to strike up a conversation with Naruto while they were speaking, but since she wasn't as talkative as Tayuya, she was ignored until Naruto took notice. "Is there anything you would like to ask me, Kin?" he asked his fellow summoner. "Well, Naruto. Sama, I was Woner." Naruto interrupted, "Call me Naruto. Naruto. Sama makes me sound old." Kim nodded, agreeing. "Okay, Naruto, I was just wondering. Why? You wear those bandages on your hands?" Kin blushed at the mention of her name. Thinking it might be funny, Tayuya chose to listen in as well. When Naruto heard this, He remembered the night he nearly died and looked down at his hands. Everyone just stared as Naruto explained what had happened with Gaara and his uncle, and it would be a lie to say they were surprised. Naruto looked at everyone and said, I got them because I wanted to protect a friend and I would do it again if given the choice. Everybody who was observing him was either looking at him with pride like Orin and Mucho, or with newfound respect like Hyuga or more respect like Kin. Naruto. Sama. I don't mean to be rude or anything, but why would you want to protect someone like this, Gaara? Kim asked Naruto, her expression suggesting that she was still asking questions. Kin felt a little uneasy because Naruto was staring down at the table, thinking she had done something to enrage him. After a while, Naruto smiled and said, I did it because Gaara and I were similar in a way. Kin simply blinked, obviously not understanding. Naruto simply sighed. Everyone there thought the Yondaime sealed it within a young baby, and that baby was me. When I was born, the Kyuubi no Yoko attacked and almost destroyed my home village, but it was defeated thanks to the Yondaime Hokage, albeit at the expense of his life. But that's not what really happened, Naruto said, perplexing everyone. In reality the Kyuubi was one of the fallen eon and was actually killed by the Yondaime. Everyone, including Hyuga, gasped at this, not believing that someone could do such a thing to an infant. But because no one was aware that the Kyuubi was dead, they all believed it was still sealed within me. They saw me as the Kyuubi's reincarnation, and they vented their resentment on me. Everyone could tell that Naruto was reluctant to discuss this past when he fell silent. At the end of Hyuga's little tirade, many people were just staring at the young redhead whose face matched her hair. Everyone fell silent except for Hyuga, who expressed her feelings in what she considered to be normal. What kind of fucking bullshit is that, damn it? I mean, who the fuck beats a young fucking kid because he may have a fucking demon sealed? I mean, how much of a fucking shithead do you have to tell the fucking difference between goddamn fucking demons and goddamn fucking babies? I mean, fuck jeez. Naruto asked, what are you doing, Kin? As he saw Kin writing in a small book while Hyuga was taking a breather. She merely said, I keep track of how many times Hyuga. Sama swears she almost broke her record. Naruto blinked and asked, what's her record then? Kin handed him the book. Right here, after flipping through a few pages. When Naruto saw this, his eyes turned to dinner plates. Was one of your parents a sailor or something? I mean, your Ka-san must have. Naruto said without thinking when his eyes finally returned to normal, but he didn't finish his sentence before Hyuga gave him a hard punch to the face. Naruto was flung against the wall as a result, blood streaming from his mouth and nose. When he looked into her eyes, he saw nothing but anger, hatred, sorrow, and most importantly, betrayal. He was about to yell at her and ask why she did that. Naruto heard her words and felt nothing but pain, especially when she mentioned family, which made him think, something must have happened in her past. Something horrible. Hyuga grabbed Naruto by the front of the shirt and helped him in midair, then glared at him, saying, you keep your fucking mouth shut, asshole, you don't know a fucking thing about me or my family, got it? After that, Hyuga gave Naruto one last punch to the face and left the room. Outside, seeing that this would lead to issues later, Mucho shook his head emphatically and made the decision to assist. He then left the room and followed Hyuga. When Mucho went outside, he discovered Hyuga sitting by one of the koi fish ponds, looking as though she was crying. He inhaled deeply and approached her from behind, but she was too preoccupied to notice him because she was so overcome with sadness. When he sat down beside her and put a hand on her shoulder, she flinched and was ready to punch whoever it was, a Euro. Hopefully Naruto, a Euro, but she stopped when she realized it was Mucho. What do you want, you damn geezer? Hyuga asked him with her typical glare and attitude. Mucho sat down next to her, ignoring the geezer comment, saying, you act very mature for your age, but those tears show that you're still a child. Hyuga blushed at the remark, saying, I'm not some lil brat and I haven't been one in a long time and you don't know shit about me, so go and leave me the fuck alone, alright? Hyuga's blood began to boil, and she tried her hardest not to pouch the old fuck in the face when Mucho used a low blow, realizing that this would not be an easy situation. Naruto. Sama was right, one of your parents must have a sailor or something, most likely you're a Tucson. Mucho could see that his words were having an impact on the young redhead, and although he hated to do it, he knew that it was important to let these feelings out before they took over and ruined her life. All it took to set Hyuga off was the words, or maybe you picked it up from your Ka-san. Fuck off, you bastard, don't bring those fucker into this. She ran towards him, prepared to punch his lights out, just like she did with Naruto, but Mucho easily grabbed her fist and held onto it. Mucho also caught it when Hyuga tried to make a fist with her arm. Hyuga attempted to free her hands, but she was unable to escape Mucho's hold. Tayuya's eyes widened in surprise as Mucho smirked and said, "I'm right, aren't I? I bet you were all alone before you found kin. No one cared about you and put a don't give a shit attitude to convince others that's who you really are. But I can see the truth, you're just a lil who wants to cry out for her ka.san but knows that she will never come." She glared at the old with all the murderous intent she could muster, saying, "Let me go, damn it." Tayuya broke down after what felt like an excessive number of hours because she could no longer bear the mental barriers. She had dropped to her knees, refusing to look Mucho in the eye and instead staring at the ground. Mucho crouched down to her and put a hand on her shoulder after a few minutes. Tayuya felt this and looked up at the elderly man, who smiled and said, "Tayuya. Sama, believe me when I say that you don't have to be alone. There are people who do care for you, and trust me when I say this." Tayuya continued to stare at him, unsure of what he would say, until he finally said, "You are not alone." At the sound of these words, she felt a strange warmth inside of her, and whatever it was, she relished the opportunity to smile at the elderly man. "Arigato G.san." Mucho simply grinned, saying, "No problem, but if you come with me I think I can really help you with something." Tayuya simply nodded and followed the elderly man. Bushes close to Mucho and Tayuya, Naruto exclaimed, "Ouch, damn twigs," as he brushed himself off after emerging from the bushes. Kin and, somewhat unexpectedly, Orin followed him. "So what do you think we should do next? Go after Tayuya Sama or head back to the dining room?" asked Kin, who blinked and said, "Oh yeah, Gomen." Naruto simply stared at her. "This was all your idea and you're asking what we should do next?" he asked. "Why are you here?" Naruto simply sighed and turned to face Orin. "I thought there would be sake if I came along," Orin said, looking at the student. "Why are we doing this again? I mean, I know you wanted to check up on Tayuya, but she seemed like she can take care of herself." Kin turned to face Naruto and said, "I know Tayuya Sama is strong, but she has had a rough past, and if it weren't for here I don't think I would be here now. I just want to make sure everything is okay with the one person who saved my life." Naruto simply grinned upon hearing these words. Returning with Mucho and Tayuya were strolling down a lengthy hallway when they came to what appeared to be a dead end. However, Mucho's touch of a panel caused the wall to open, revealing a secret passage. "That's the third hidden passage we have gone through," Tayuya said, frowning at Mucho, who looked at her bewildered. "Nani? So far we went through 2 hidden tunnels, 5 passages behind a bookcase, 6 hidden stairways, 2 trapdoors, and 3 hidden elevators. How the hell do you fit all this stuff in here anyway?" Mucho rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "That's a good question." Tayuya simply stood there blinking. When the two finally reached their destination, Mucho approached an ancient chest that was dusty, but instead of opening it, he turned back to Tayuya as though he was trying to decide something. Soon after, he paused and removed what appeared to be an ancient war flute by opening the chest. "What am I supposed to do with this fucking thing?" Tayuya asked the elderly man. Mucho simply grinned at her and said, "That flute has a history. It once belonged to a kunoichi who was a very good ninja and a very talented musician, not to mention that she was also a summoner's guardian." Tayuya was shocked by this and gave him a questioning look. "Why would you give me something like this anyway?" Tayuya looked down at the flute after hearing this and said, "Someone like me." Mucho simply grinned at the young girl and said, "I think you will have a key role in the future whether you have a choice to be a guardian or not, and if you don't, well, that flute has been waiting for a new master for a long time, some like you." Returning to the dining hall to await Tayuya and Mucho, everyone had returned to the dining hall. They didn't have to wait long because they both smiled as they walked into the room. Since she couldn't recall the last time she had seen Tayuya so joyful, Kin relished the fact that she could see that her smile was one of genuine joy. "Hey Tayuya, what's with the flute?" Naruto had to ask when he noticed that Tayuya was carrying what appeared to be a war flute. The red-haired girl simply looked at the blonde boy and said, "It's a war flute that was used by a previous guardian. Mucho thinks I could use it." Naruto simply replied, "Cool," while Kin simply looked at the girl and asked, "Will you be my guardian, Tayuya Sama?" Tayuya and Kin shared a room, much to the delight of Kin and much to the dismay of Tayuya, while Orin and Naruto also shared a room that would smell of sake to Naruto. The remainder of the night was spent discussing the future of the young guardians and listening to stories from Mucho and Orin. Early in the morning, after packing everything they would need for the lengthy journey home, Orin and Naruto entered the hallway and saw Kin standing there with a pack. She calmly said, "I've decided to go with you, Naruto Sama," looking at both swordsmen. Naruto grinned and said, "Great, but where's Tayuya anyway?" Kin looked down at the ground, and it was obvious what was happening. Naruto simply sighed, "Well, let's get going." Well, it's about damn time. What the hell took all of you so long? Said the woman with the red hair and the frown as they were leaving the grounds and approaching the front gate. Everyone just stared at Tayuya, wondering why she was there and being shocked that she hadn't left when she had the opportunity. Kin looked at Tayuya with a worried expression on her face, asking, "Tayuya, does this mean you're coming with us?" Tayuya simply rolled her eyes and said, "Of course, I'll accompany you." Kin simply grinned at the older girl and gave her a tight hug, but Tayuya was trying to nudge her away as she did so, saying, "Hell, I'm positive you wouldn't last a day without me, so I have to go to keep you out of trouble, damn it." A large crowd of people, including Mucho, gathered as the group approached the village's edge to bid the young summoners farewell. Mucho stepped forward with a kind expression and said, "Naruto. Sama, if you will grant an old man a favor." Naruto turned to face the man and asked, "What would that be, Mucho?" "Sama." Mucho simply grinned and asked, "Could you summon your eon for me?" Naruto, not anticipating this, simply nodded and moved ahead of them. He repeated this action when he was at Suna and summoned valfor, and everyone turned to watch the sky as a huge bird-like creature descended from it and landed close to Naruto. Everyone gaped at the creature in front of them, a sight that many of them had only heard about in childhood stories. Mucho, on the other hand, responded differently, approaching valfor as though he had nothing to fear from it. He simply brushed his hand over the red feathers covering its neck, grinned, and said, "Hello, old friend." As he did this, Naruto noticed that Mucho's hand was glowing in a dim light, with the word "wind" printed on it. His jaw dropped to the ground as he pointed to the elderly man, saying, You were a summoner." Mucho simply smiled and said, "How else would I know so much about the summoners of the past?" Naruto simply passed out at this point. Mucho simply grinned and said, "He reminds me of when I was young." As Mucho continued to rub its feathers, Eon simply purred and said, "Please take care of him, valfor." An hour later, Naruto was at last awake, and the group had dispersed in the direction of their destination. He and his guardian Orin had successfully retrieved Veil for the Eon of the Wind the last time with our blonde summoner. Along the way, they had also encountered another summoner. Kin, a long-haired girl who appeared to be a summoner, was the summoner. They were accompanied by Tayuga, a red-haired girl who swore like a sailor and didn't hesitate to voice her opinions. After gathering information that was extremely important for the future, the group had left the last village. To Naruto's delight, the group had decided that the Eon of Fire in Fire Country, close to Konaha, was their destination. He intended to call forth valfor and fly directly to the temple after learning its location, but Orin intervened. Kin and Tayuya, who also desired to fly, objected to this, as did Naruto. "How often do you get to fly across a country on a giant bird instead of walking?" was one of their justifications. Orin asserted, however, that traversing the nation would help them gain endurance and familiarize themselves with the terrain. They traveled in the morning, trained in the afternoon, and rested in the evening as part of their daily schedule. Orin would narrate tales of previous summoners and guardians and their achievements while they slept. The group made their final stop at Konaha after stopping in a small village near their destination in the morning. As the group surveyed the area, they noticed numerous decorations, games, and fireworks, as well as people running, laughing, and having a good time. Everyone had the same thought after seeing all of this, but Naruto exclaimed, "A festival," with excitement. Something grabbed the back of his shirt as he was trying to run for the numerous games and food, and when he turned around, he saw that Orin was holding him. After glaring at his guardian, Naruto said, "Hey Baka swordsman, what's the deal? I want to go to the festival." Orin remained silent and simply stared at the young boy for a few minutes before responding, "Well, why not, asshole?" Orin simply pointed to a large temple and said, "You have to go there first, then you can go to the festival." Naruto grinned, "Well, why the hell didn't you say so?" and fled. Once he was out of sight, Orin let out a sigh and turned to the ground as if he were bothered by something. "Orin. Sama, is something wrong?" Kim had to ask after noticing this. Ruan simply glanced at the girl and asked, "Did you two see the name of this village?" Kim stood there trying to think, but Tayuya responded first, "Farplain Village, so what's the big fucking deal?" Orin didn't respond, and the two could sense that something significant was about to happen. Naruto at the temple with him ignoring the irate cries of the nearby villagers, Naruto dashed to the temple, crashing into people and carts. When he finally reached the temple, Naruto noticed that Miko and several monks were wandering around it as though they were getting ready for someone to arrive. He approached a Miko who was dusting off a big statue of Sumimasen Ga. The young priestess smiled at the young boy and asked, "Can I help you, young man?" Naruto simply grinned and said, "Hi, could you tell me what's going on here at the temple?" The Miko looked at the blonde, as if he didn't know, then assumed he wasn't from the area and consented to show him around. Naruto was given a tour of the temple by the Miko, who showed him the various statues and images and explained their significance. Among them were pictures of different summoners. He even spotted one that appeared to be a young mucho. He continued to scan the area and noticed numerous weapons that had previously been used by guardians to protect summoners. While exploring his surroundings, Naruto noticed something that truly drew his attention. A man in a red outfit with black hair and a massive sword on his back was depicted in the painting. Orin. With a song voice and a flushed face, the Miko explained, "Hi, Orin. Sama or Sir Orin, so many names for that man. He was said to be the greatest guardian of all time and by far the most powerful swordsman to ever live." She was surprised by Naruto's response, though, asking, "So that's what the drunken Baka swordsman looks like young?" When the Miko heard this, he glared at Naruto, saying, "How dare you say such things about Orin, Sama? He was the greatest guardian of all time and even guarded the great high summoner Yuna-san. You have no right to speak that way." Naruto simply gave the young Miko a stern look, saying, "Well, he's still nothing but a drunk. Even if he is a powerful swordsman, he's still a drunk." The Miko continued to glare at Naruto, threatening to beat him to death, saying, "What a little brat like you know about Orin. Sama, you don't even the importance of gates of the far plane." When Naruto heard this, he turned to face Miko. "Gates of the far plane?" she asked, knowing that she had outwitted the little brat. "Hi, the gates of the far plane is a very spiritual place and very important to summoners who come to learn the art of ascending." Naruto then turned to face Miko. "The sending?" she asked, nodding. "Hi. The sending is a very important part of the duties of a summoner, for it is the art of sending the souls of the dead to the other side to find peace." When Naruto heard this, he gasped in surprise and asked, "Is that why Orin sent me here?" After noticing a change in Naruto, the Miko was about to inquire as to what was wrong when he said, "Hey, just what is the far plane anyway?" The far plane is a gift from the eons to mankind. It is a small piece of physical land place between our world and the world of the dead. When the eons were still around, people used the far plane to say goodbye to the ones they lost, Miko explained, starting off with surprise. Naruto was so absorbed in his thoughts that he failed to notice the Miko attempting to get his attention. "Nani, what do you say?" And a shiver went up his spine as he suddenly realized why Orin had sent him to the temple. "I asked you if you wanted to see the actual gates of the far plane," the Miko said, her face displaying annoyance. When Naruto heard this, he nodded his head, though he wasn't quite sure why. As the Miko led Naruto down a hallway, he passed by numerous people who gave him strange looks, but he didn't mind because, since he became a summoner, he had received strange looks from almost every village that had heard of him. "Gomen, but why are you taking me to the gates of Farplane, anyway?" Naruto asked the Miko as they continued to walk. The Miko looked at Naruto and simply stared at the young boy, asking herself, "Why am I doing this?" Naruto accepted without even considering questioning her response. Everyone should see the gates at least once. The two had entered the temple further and were now standing in front of a large iron door, which was surrounded by two sets of chains on both the top and bottom halves. The top half of the chains glowed with a powerful aura, while the bottom half appeared to have been cut in half. "Hey Miko. Sama, what's with the chains and the wired door?" Naruto asked, looking at the Miko, who simply sighed and said, "The chains were placed on the door by the last summoners. They are a spiritual and physical lock." Naruto was visibly perplexed. Naruto nodded, indicating that he understood, now to ensure the safety of those in the far plane would not be disturbed. Miko sighed, "So, before the eons left our world, they placed two types of locks to ensure nothing could enter and disrupt the far plane. The eons decided that gates would remain locked until they felt it was appropriate to let humanity use their power once more. As a last precaution, the eons installed locks that would prevent entry by both physical and spiritual entities. So if the locks kept people and spirits out, how did the dead enter the far plane after it was sealed?" Miko didn't initially respond, instead merely staring at the ground. They couldn't. Once the gates were sealed shut and nothing could get in. The dead have since had no choice but to find other ways to enter the realm of the dead. Naruto nodded his head, understanding most of what she was saying. After opening his eyes in shock at what he was hearing, Naruto started to think about what it would be like to be imprisoned far from your loved ones, never permitted to rest or reunite with them. He then recalled his life prior to becoming a summoner, when he was constantly alone and unwelcome, never permitted to be with his family, and constantly denied the very existence of happiness at Euro, like he was. "So how do you open the last lock anyway?" Naruto asked Miko, waking up from his reverie. The Miko answered, I honestly don't know, only the chosen summoner of the eons will be able to break the lock and open the door and enter the far plane, after glancing at the young boy and wondering why he would ask such a question. As you can see, the far plane's physical lock, which was designed to keep mortals out, suddenly broke for no apparent reason. We recognized this as a sign when it occurred, and many people interpreted it as a portent of great things to come. However, I feel sorry for the person who must do it. It's like dancing to tell the spirits of the dead where to go so they can enter the far plane and find peace. Naruto simply looked at her and asked for an apology, saying, see, when the summoner opens the gates to the far plane they must learn the sending. But regrettably, the summoner will experience the anguish, grief, and regret of each soul they send when they perform the dance. Nervous, Naruto asked, just how many souls are we talking about? I don't know, because the last sending was done many years ago, and shortly after that, the far plane was sealed off, the Miko sighed. Thus, there must be an infinite number of souls that have failed to cross over. There was silence as Naruto took a moment to gather himself before starting to move in the direction of the door. When the Miko saw this, he attempted to stop Naruto by saying, boy, what are you doing? Get away from there this instant. Naruto stood motionless in front of the door until he said, I understand that responsibility. I also understand that it is also my responsibility to protect the world and help the dead. What are you talking about? I thought I made clear that the only person who can open that door is the new summoner, not some kid. Miko stared at him in confusion. Naruto didn't respond. Instead, he simply placed his hand, which was marked with the symbol of destruction, on the door. As he did so, the spiritual chain that had been keeping the door closed started to glow brightly and then abruptly broke, letting the door open. Until she saw it, the Miko stood there, unable to comprehend what was happening with this boy. The Miko was so absorbed in her discovery that the heavy iron doors that had kept the far plane closed for so long started to slowly open as the symbol of destruction on Naruto's hand started to glow brightly. He is the one, the summoner we have been waiting for, the Miko exclaimed as she saw this. A dazzling white light started to shine through the small opening created as soon as the doors were far enough apart. The Miko had to shield her eyes from the intense gust of wind coming from the door as the white light grew brighter and filled the room. The Miko was forced to take a step backwards due to the intensity of the wind and light. She even started thinking about fleeing to avoid the violent elements that were currently on display. She turned around and tried to find the boy, but she stopped herself when she thought of him. Regretfully, the wind had somehow increased in strength and the light had become brighter, which shouldn't have been possible. Boy, listen to me. I understand why you're doing, but believe me, you are still a child and not ready for the hardship this will bring. Please come with me before it's too late. She was unable to get any closer to him and had to try to talk him out of it because he was too young for this responsibility. The Miko heard nothing, but listened for any sound that might indicate a response. She had to try to get as close to the opening as she could because shouting was not going to work. She ignored the pain she was experiencing from the intense wind and burning light as she approached the once closed gates of the far plane, inch by inch. As she approached the gates, only a few inches away, she noticed a figure gazing into the light. Assuming it was Naruto, the Miko extended her hand to grasp him, saying, boy, take my hand, please. Like most kids who don't know what's going on, the Miko expected him to listen and react fearfully. With Naruto, however, that was not the case. Rather than accepting the Miko's hand, he simply turned to face her while maintaining an expression devoid of emotion. Despite his youth, he seemed to know what he was doing and had no regrets if something went wrong because of the signs of pride, determination, and duty in his eyes. Miko pulled her hand back, feeling some sort of relief from those blue eyes, and watched as the young summoner in front of her, who was actually a boy, put on a fox-like grin before fading into the light. The Miko simply stood there, observing the location where Naruto had been just a moment before, after Naruto had fully vanished into the light. The Miko continued to stare into Farplane, not even noticing that the light was no longer bothering her eyes. At some point, the light became so dim that Miko blinked and rubbed her eyes, waiting for them to adjust and allow her to see. She gasped in surprise as she gazed at the opening that led into the Farplane, after regaining her vision. Although she had heard many tales about the Farplane as a child, Miko was unable to look away from the scene as tears started to stream down her cheeks. She never imagined that she would ever see something so stunning that she would be unaware of the ground trembling beneath her. With Tayuya, Kim, and Orin was back with the others, explaining to them why Naruto had to go to the temple and what he had to do. Knowing that she would eventually have to do the same thing, Kin made the decision to listen carefully to everything Orin said in order to ensure that she learned everything by heart. Hyuga simply sat there, watching Orin suspiciously while Kin was absorbed in everything with great enthusiasm. "Do you have something you wish to say, Hyuga?" Orin asked, observing Hyuga. Kin heard this and turned to face Hyuga, recognizing the expression on the redhead's face that said, "This is not going to turn out well." Hyuga simply put on an evil smile and said, "What I have to say is you expect us to fucking believe this bullshit about dead PEPOPLE and FARPLAIN and all this other fucking GARABE you saying out your fucking mouth." Kin heard the tone in Hyuga's voice and panicked, thinking, "Here it comes." Orin simply looked clammed as usual, "And what is it you would like to me? Please speak your mind." "What exactly do you find so fucking unbelievable, Hyuga-san?" Orin asked the foul-mouthed girl, emotionless, as he stared at him. Both girls did a double take at this, never hearing or anticipating that Orin would swear, but Hyuga quickly moved on, saying, "You expect us to believe that Naruto going becoming some kind of messenger of the dead?" Orin was simply nodding. That is one way of looking at for some people who called summoners shepherd of dead because of their abilities to send the dead to the other side. Hyuga laughed, "So what are you going to be telling now that we're going to be running into the walking dead or something?" Orin simply smiled darkly at her. "You don't seem to have a problem with me even though I am dead." Unable to find the necessary words, Hyuga and Kin blinked as they looked in front of them. Orin simply looked at her and said, "It's true," in a serious tone of voice, at least until Hyuga started saying, "Bullshit." With a disbelieving expression, Hyuga said, "Why don't you fucking prove it then, asshole?" At first, Orin just reached into his coat without doing anything. Silently, the two girls exchanged glances and asked one another what he was doing. Orin pulled out a kunai, put it at his wrist, and looked at the two girls, saying, "You still don't believe me, do you?" Hyuga nodded her head, thinking he was bluffing, while Kin shook his head, thinking he would pull it off. Hyuga was growing impatient and said, "Well fucker, if you're going to do it, then FUCKNG do it already." Orin continued to hold the kunai over his wrist for a minute or two before suddenly ramming it through his wrist, piercing the skin and the vein. The bloody scene in front of them left the two girls speechless as they sat there and watched. To avoid having to face the scene before her, Kin went green and shielded her eyes. Though she had a tougher stomach and had witnessed slightly worse, Hyuga's reaction was different. Although she felt sick at the sight of Orin's blood, she had to say, "Why the fuck is wrong with you, asshole? I wasn't fucking serious when I fucking said that, dumbass." With a sick smile on his face, Orin raised the blade to his throat, keeping it just inches from his skin, and simply stared at her without showing any emotion. "You asked for proof and you got it, or do you need more?" he asked. Kin and Hyuga wanted to stop him before it was too late because they already knew what he was going to do. Unfortunately, it made no difference because Orin had already pierced the flesh and started cutting, leaving a long, clean cut across his throat. Kin lost the lunch she had eaten earlier, and Hyuga simply covered her eyes, making the scene in front of them worse than it had been before. The two girls could still hear the gurgling sound of the blood clogging the warrior's throat, but they avoided looking at the now dead warrior out of fear for what they saw. Both girls eagerly awaited the end of the choking noise to see if Orin had passed away. When the girls turned to face the man who was supposed to be Naruto's guardian, they noticed that he was staring at the ground while big drops of blood were spilling down his clothing. Unbelieving that someone would do such a thing, the two girls simply gazed at the scene before them. The girls started to approach Orin's dead body, to determine whether he had actually passed away, was pretending, or was employing genjutsu. Using the techniques she had previously learned as a child, Hyuga attempted to cancel the genjutsu. Hyuga started to approach the body as closely as she desired after completing this and realizing it wasn't a genjutsu. After approaching the deceased man as closely as she could, Hyuga started prodding him with a stick. She started prodding the body in an attempt to elicit a response from him that would demonstrate that he was acting. Hyuga gave up and decided that Orin was dead after at least 5 pokes. For a brief moment, Hyuga felt as though she was pleading for his soul when she saw the body of their purported guardian in front of her. If he hadn't been such a moron for doing something so foolish that he killed himself, it would have felt like that. Kin was in a different mood than Hyuga, who was staring at the corpse. She had grown to respect and admire Orin, so seeing him dead in front of him was extremely distressing, and she was clearly shaking at the sight. She tried her hardest, but her eyes continued to well up with tears. The two girls were too preoccupied with their sorrows to notice that Orin had raised his head again, turned to face them, and grinned, saying, "I never thought you two cared about me that much." Orin was still sitting there with the cut on his throat still fresh and dripping blood when the two girls looked up and blinked at the voice they had heard. When both girls saw this, they both turned white as ghosts and yelled, "Holy fucking shit, zombie." Orin's eye twitched at being called a zombie once more, but he could still understand their reaction and decided that it was still better than Naruto, so they didn't try running. Most of Tayuya's fear subsided after she swallowed, but she was still shackled in terror. Standing in front of someone who was both dead and alive at the same time caused fear, which is something that most sane people are afraid of. "So a euro, so you really are dead a euro, aren't you?" Tayuya found the words she needed to say with a final deep breath. Orin nodded his head, indicating that he was telling the truth, but he also put on a sick smile as he brought the kunai he still had up to his chest. "Do you want more proof?" Orin asked, but before the girls could respond, he stabbed the kunai through his chest, right to where his heart was, and left it there. Since they had some idea of what to expect, neither of the girls was as disturbed by the scene in front of him as the first two acts. Relieved that he would survive after everything that had just happened to him, Kin continued to gaze at Orin. But she also shuddered at the thought of the nightmares she would have in which Orin would hold her head in his hand, remove bits of her brain, and consume it as a snack. Tayuya simply grinned at Orin at the use of a living, breathing target. Images of Orin being tortured, used as a practice dummy for kunai throwing, or even set on fire filled her head. There are so many possibilities for this drunk fucking bastard, she thought. Shortly after, the earth started to tremble beneath the two girls, knocking them out of their reverie. A huge bright light shot up from where the temple was straight into the sky, annoying Tayuya. Fucking Naruto, can't he keep things simple? Kin, terrified for her life, grabbed Tayuya's arm and yelled, "We're going to die." Tayuya was more calm than that as she tried to keep her balance. A lake in the village center. Many of the villagers who had experienced the tremor started running in a panic toward the center of their village. They were all putting up last-minute decorations throughout the space, preparing a stage, and getting both male and female vocalists ready for an event. Since everyone was too busy to provide them with a direct response, Tayuya, Kin, and Orin started to follow the throngs of people inquiring as to what was happening. Giving up, they each made the decision to secure a prime location in front of the lake for the upcoming performance. As many of the monks lit the final candles and started to pray, the atmosphere quickly became quiet. After a collective sigh, the monks and village elders started singing a heartfelt and poignant song called Hymn of the Faith, and everyone in the village joined in. 3 people were attempting to understand what was happening when everyone suddenly started singing in perfect unison. Being more than familiar with the hymn's progression, Orin stood there feeling a little relieved that the song would endure despite the passing of many things he had lost. But hearing it brought back memories of old friends, and Orin also felt regret. Tayuya stood there, paying attention to every word that was uttered along with the hymn. She experienced an odd feeling as she listened to it. It was pleasant to hear this song, and she wanted to listen to it continuously. Tayuya had felt content with herself for what felt like a long time. Kin let the words flow through her as she listened to the hymn. They were calming, and evoked a calm Kin was unaware of. Kin started to involuntarily rub the symbol on her hand as this serenity swept over her, asking herself, is this one of the benefits of being a summoner? When the small group finally looked at the lake, which was now glowing brightly, their attention was drawn away from their thoughts. A flash of light, one of which was a bright sliver with the wind symbol underneath it, started to shoot out of the lake and into the sky before anyone could question what was happening. Following the silver light, more lights started to emerge from the lake. Red came next, followed by yellow, then blue, gray, purple, and green. All of the lights arranged themselves in a circle, with a white light at its core. The villagers turned to face the center in the hopes of spotting a figure standing there with what appeared to be a silk kimono on over his head and a large sword in his hands. After they were able to identify this individual, some of the people started whispering, "The summoner." Luckily, Tayuya, Kin, and Orin saw this and turned to face the lake, hoping to catch a glimpse of their foolish blonde, but they were wrong. They didn't recognize the blonde when they looked at the figure on the lake. Instead, they saw someone entirely different. This individual shared Naruto's body, face, and even whisker marks. His eyes were different, which was the difference. All of the vitality and excitement that one would typically see in a child had vanished, replaced by a somber and icy quality that only hardened warriors could possess. To put it simply, Naruto had assumed the roles of the leader who was going to make a terrible sacrifice, the father who had no choice but to condemn their own child, and the warrior who was ready to charge into battle. To put it briefly, Naruto was going to do something that would benefit a lot of people but leave him with numerous scars that he would have to wear. Lake's center. Naruto stood there, unable to fully comprehend what he had witnessed. He recalled entering the far plane, after which he was left wondering what he was seeing as only images and bursts of bright light flashed before his eyes. Then he found himself standing in a field of flowers he had never seen before. They were both strange and deep red. He tried to orient himself by looking around at the scenery, but he was shocked by what he saw. It appeared as though a sunset was taking place in the deep orange and red sky, but the Sunayuro, or Sunsayuro, were high in the sky. The fields continued for miles and miles, surrounded by grasslands, waterfalls, and mountains. But what really drew Naruto's attention was the air. There was something serene about it. Naruto ascended a ledge that provided a view of a valley. When Naruto looked down, he saw what appeared to be a lake at the bottom, but it was surrounded by thousands of bright lights. Before he knocked it over the edge, Naruto didn't notice the small rock beneath his foot, so he stepped closer to try to get a better look at what was happening. When this occurs, the lights appear to be responding to a threat and are dispersed in all directions. After realizing his error, Naruto did what he always did in situations like this. Fuck. He cursed like the obnoxious brat that he was. But this time, he felt a slap on the back of his head that said, "Watch your mouth, Gaki." Holding his head in agony, Naruto turned to see what jerk had chosen to mess with him. A stunning woman wearing long red Anbu gear, a konaha headband, and an orange swirl on her vest caught him off guard. The woman seemed familiar to Naruto, but he was at a loss for words. Now, however, he had no time to be bothered by such a thing. "Hey lady, where the hell am I and why the hell did you it? Damn it." Instead of responding with words, the red-haired woman punched Naruto again in the back of his head and kicked him in the ribs. "I said watch your mouth, Gaki." Naruto glared at the woman and said, "Why should I listen to you? You're not my Ka-san." After saying that, he felt an odd sensation in his stomach that he couldn't place. Additionally, Naruto saw a certain coldness in the woman's eyes that conveyed both hurt and regret. Orin had taught him to always grasp the surrounding knowledge a euro, especially after your 18th or so bottle of sake. Damn Baka swordsman can't even teach a good lesson without some kind of alcohol. Damn zombie booze hound. Naruto began, but the woman interrupted him, saying, "Okay, let's make this quick, I got better things to do." Naruto nodded and sat in front of the woman, willing to listen. When the redhead saw that Naruto was disoriented, she decided to use what she had on hand, a rock euro, to wake him up and threw it directly at his head. When the woman had an evil smirk on her face, Naruto felt this and glared at her, saying, "Now that you're paying attention, I began to explain why your Haria euro well, at least from others told me personally, I don't believe a word of it. I mean, when they said that a new summoner was coming, almost everyone here in the far plane went crazy. It was hilarious to see everyone running around like chickens with their heads chopped off. Then I'm called up saying that I have to explain everything to the supposed newest summoner." The woman laughed, and Naruto just glared at her. I heard her say this in a calm and sickly voice. The woman continued to laugh at the blonde's rage for her, saying, "And when I get me so-called new and great summoner I find." The two kept smiling, but Naruto clenched his fist and said, "But why I find is a loud-mouthed, baka-looking midget who not only is just playing pretend when it comes to being a summoner." He grabbed the first thing he could and, without realizing it, swung his sword at the woman, who easily avoided it. He swore at this, but he didn't stop. He stood up and positioned himself for another attack, but the woman he was going to attack was gone, so he looked around to see where she had gone. Then he heard the words, "To slow Gaki." Prior to turning or blocking, he felt a blow to his back, and he fell to the ground. The red-haired woman stood over the young boy, assessing him, saying, "He has some skill with a blade from the speed it took him to get into the stance, but he lacks experience with it." The woman smiled at the boy as he stood up and entered fighting position, but before he could attack, she put her blade away. The woman was holding a standard Anbu sword in her hand, but the blade was on the other side, so she couldn't actually cut Naruto. Glaring at the woman, Naruto said, "Hey, I'm not done yet, bring out your sword, lady." The woman sighed, "First thing, kid, stop calling me lady." Naruto felt a little insulted that the woman in front of him was not taking him seriously and was putting her sword away. "I've given it the name Kushina, got it?" The woman now known as Kushina simply rolled her eyes and said, "Fine Gaki, the reason I'm here is to teach you the sending and maybe a few other things about past summoners." Naruto simply gave her an irritated look with the words, "Like I care what your name is, lady, can we just get to why I here already? You've already wasted enough of my time as it is." "Huh, what would you know about summoners, lady?" Naruto asked Kushina incredulously. When he heard this, Kushina gave him a sly grin that was oddly similar to his own. "I'll have you know that I grew up in a village where the temple of the Eon of Destruction was." Naruto gazed at Kushina with wide eyes. "Your village housed Bahamut. Sama." Kushina grinned proudly. Kushina grinned proudly as he saw Naruto rose a copyright up his hand and reveal the symbol of destruction on his bandaged hand. Seeking clarification, Naruto asked, if you're from a different village, why do you have a konaha headband? He was so thrilled to hear where his eon was that he forgot his anger and frustration at Kushina until he noticed the leaf headband around her neck. I was born in Whirlpool Country, where the temple of Bahamut was, Kushina merely sighed. I moved in during the Shinobi War, and I'm afraid I also died there. Kushina glanced at the ground. At this, Naruto felt sorry for the woman in front of him, saying, Gomen, I didn't know. Kushina simply shrugged her shoulders and said, it's okay, I died almost 6 years ago so I'm over it now. However, the tone of her voice revealed her true feelings. Naruto nodded and started listening to everything Kushina said about past summoners and her life as a shinobi. For some reason, hearing the hurt in Kushina's voice affected Naruto as well, and he wanted to comfort her. However, he never had the chance to ask because Kushina got up and beat him to any questions, saying, okay kid, all this chit-chat had gone on long enough, we have to work to do. Naruto enjoyed training with Kushina and learning not only swordsmanship but also history from her, which usually took him by storm. However, something was bothering him about the way Kushina looked at him. In her eyes, she displayed a great sadness that he couldn't understand. The two conversated for many hours, as if they had been friends who hadn't seen each other in years. Naruto then chose to inquire, hey Kushina-san, did you leave anyone behind when you died? After they had just completed rehearsing the sending's moves, Naruto was about to ask more questions when Kushina glared at him and said, I said drop it. Naruto took a step back but nodded. Kushina looked at the blonde-haired summoner and sighed, hi, I did now drop it. After a while, Naruto had mastered almost all of his stances for the sending and his swordsmanship had significantly improved, but he knew he couldn't stay here because he had things to do and people to return to, especially Hinata. Naruto was resting in one of the many fields, enjoying the view and staring at the orange sky. He wasn't too worried about doing anything because Kushina had told him that time here and time in the living world flowed in a different sort of way. Naruto was so absorbed in his thoughts that he failed to notice Kushina approaching him and asking, is someone on your mind? Naruto just looked at the red-haired woman and nodded his head. Kushina smiled. What her name? Without considering what she had said, Naruto said, Hyuga Hinata. When he realized what he had said, he covered his mouth. With a chuckle at her small antics, Kushina decided to play along, saying, Hinata good name and a Hyuga no less, you're in for a treat when you get older. Naruto turned to face the woman, hesitant to inquire about her topic, but he did so. What do you mean? Well, I knew a few Hyuga from my time in Konaha, and let's just say when they come of age, they're perfect to look at from the neck down, Kushina said with a menacing smile. When he heard her say, what I'm talking about Naruto-kun is when your little Hinata-chan grows up she won't be so little especially when I come to her chest. Naruto looked at the woman inquiringly, not understanding what she was saying. Kushina saw this and grinned. That's right Gaki, and we're talking about melon-sized tits, flat stomach, long legs, cute face, long slick hair, and of course a nice firm ass. Kushina looked at the blonde and started laughing loudly while holding her ribs, saying, he's got more than a crush on the girl. I wonder if she related to Hashi and Aki if the little pansy finally grew a pair and asked her to marry him. Naruto tried his best to ignore everything Kushina was saying, but he was unsuccessful because he kept seeing an image of an older Hinata that looked exactly like Kushina. After this, he was literally shot into due to the large amount of blood shooting out of his nose. This marked the end of Naruto's training with Kushina. He was saddened by the thought of leaving her and most likely never seeing her again, but he also knew he had to leave quickly to return to everyone else. He wasn't sure why this bothered him, but in the brief time they spent together, Kushina had taken on the role of a mother figure to Naruto, and he enjoyed it and didn't want it to end though he knew it had to. Kushina was standing over Naruto, checking him for any flaws as he performed the entire sending ritual. When he was done, he glanced at his teacher to check for her approval. With her arms folded and an unusually serious expression on her face, Kushina stood over Naruto. She continued to glare at the boy without saying anything at first, but then she broke the gaze and gave him the thumbs up, saying, nice work, Gaki, not a single flaw. As any child his age would, Naruto broke his wide smile and jumped with delight as he looked at Kushina and asked, so what now, Kushina-sensei? Kushina simply nodded her head, saying, now we have to get an approval from the previous high summoners and you can be on your way. Naruto felt sick to his stomach when he heard the words, pervious high summoners, and, on his way. He started to feel dread as he glanced at the ground. Look, Gaki, I'll admit I enjoyed our little time together, but this is the realm of the dead, you don't belong here. You have friends to get back to, and I can certainly tell you it's not polite to keep a girl waiting. Naruto recognized this and turned to face the boy, asking, "What up, kid?" He didn't respond, but Kushina could tell what was wrong. Kushina blinked, not anticipating this. "Sure, what do want, and only if you pass on your first try." Naruto nodded. "I want you tell me about your life." Kushina heard, but didn't answer until she said, "Deal." Naruto sighed and nodded his head. "I understand, but could you do something for me if I do this right?" The far plains center. Naruto and Kushina approached a circular patch of stone with carved symbols of in. Behind the symbol was a stone that glowed brightly, containing the same symbol but glowing. Kushina stood by Naruto as if waiting for someone while he was taking in the scenery, and after waiting for about 2 minutes, she became impatient and yelled, "Hey, where the hell is everyone?" She crossed her arms in a childish manner, not understanding the response, and said, "Figurers say don't be late, but they're never on time, is so stupid." Kushina simply sighed and turned to face Naruto, who was glaring at her. Kushina was taken aback. "Nani? We were supposed to be doing something important," Naruto said, maintaining his expression. Kushina looked at the blonde boy, her mouth hanging open and her eyes almost popping out of their sockets. After a few moments, she said the only thing she could think of, "What the fuck did you say, you?" Naruto simply shrugged his shoulders and said, "You heard me." Naruto then found himself in a chokehold due to Kushina's encouragement. The two failed to realize that they had a guest watching them and enjoying the show while they were trying to kill each other. They had to end the show because, "If you two are done, we have a ritual to perform." Blonde and redhead turned to see who the voice had come from, and they saw a little boy in a purple outfit with brown skin. Bahamut. Sama, was the first thing they said when they recognized him. Standing there grinning like a child, Bahamut said, "It's good to see you again, especially you, Naruto." Naruto was able to worm his way out of Kushina's hold and walk over Bahamut, talking about everything he had learned since their last meeting, but he was mostly boosting and exaggerating, which irritated Kushina, who was still upset that he had called her childish. Everyone turned to see an elderly woman grinning at them all after hearing another voice say, "I see most of us are here." Before anyone could respond, Naruto had already bottled up his anger towards the woman, Anima, Sama. As far as Kushina was aware, only summoners who were nearing the end of their pilgrimage were permitted to meet Anima, so she was a little surprised to hear that Naruto had already met Lady Anima. Kushina had to inquire, "Hey Naruto, how do you know Anima?" Sama, because she disliked being kept in the dark. Anima. Sama is going to be Hinata. Chan summon, Naruto said, grinning at Kushina. "So that's how their relationship is going to work, hee," Kushina said with a smile and a gasp. Once everything was in place, Naruto stood in the middle of the stone ring, and he could see Kushina smiling strangely in front of him. Naruto had frequently seen off mothers whose children had graduated from the academy, and next to her was a brunette with a lovely face but strange eyes, one green, the other blue. Valfor had chosen to join in and watch, but most of the area was deserted, and when he asked, he was told that the other eons were either busy or didn't like him because he was a man. Before he began, Naruto recalled that Bahamut had advised him that the best way to avoid the pain of the sending was to think about someone that clammed his and cancelled the pain he felt. He was told that it was supposed to be either a strong memory of either something or someone. He waited for the hymn of the faith to begin so that he could begin. He wanted to get this right the first time, and he also needed to pay attention to the advice Bahamut had given him. When the hymn started, Naruto, with his sword in hand, started to move in a pattern that Kushina had drilled into his head. He moved as if he had no control, but he knew he did, and before he knew it, it was over. Naruto couldn't think of a memory strong enough to help him now, but he was told that this was just a practice before the real thing. In response to Kushina's silent question about whether the brunette passed, the woman simply grinned and said, "He's not bad for a beginner." Kushina exhaled loudly in relief, "Arigato, Lady Yuna." The Far Plains entrance. Everybody who had witnessed the ceremony wanted to say their final goodbyes to the young summoner as Naruto stood at what was known as the Door of the Living, with a new outfit on him and his sword on his back. Everyone expected him to leap through the portal and head home, but instead he remained silent until he said, "We had deal, Kushina-san." Naruto simply stood there, frowning, staring straight at Kushina. Everyone rolled their eyes at Kushina's boosting when they heard this. "I was born in Whirlpool Country, I trained my whole life to be the best shinobi and I was." I took part in the last shinobi war. I met a man unlike any other. Kushina's eyes started to water as tears streamed down her face. Then the war was over and this man and I married. At the next collection of memories, Kushina paused and grinned, recalling those moments where the happiest days of my life were. For a brief moment, there was only that man and the life developing inside of Mayayuro, no murder or conflict. When Naruto heard this, his eyes widened and he turned to face the woman, not even realizing that she had once been a mother. Naruto wanted to respond, but Kushina interrupted, saying, "Not long after that I found out I was pregnant I went to tell this man in person." Kushina grinned and said, "The moment I told Himayuro he fainted right there." Soon after Kushina went on, "So after he finally woke up the first thing he did was grab me and get on one knee and ask me to marry him and I accepted." Naruto grinned, thinking that was it, but Kushina said something that stopped him cold. After that he took the role as Yondaime Hokage. Everyone in the audience started laughing, including Naruto, but he had no idea why. When Naruto heard this, he turned to face the woman in front of him, trying to determine whether she was telling the truth, but he could tell that she was. Kushina then, for some reason, started to approach Naruto, saying, "Soon months went by and my child was to be born on October 10th. With Kushina at eye level, Naruto swallowed, nearly terrified to hear what would come next. That night, the Kyuubi attack, I gave birth to my son, a blonde-haired boy with blue eyes who looked exactly like his father," Naruto said. "I got to hold my son for the first time, but I wouldn't last long because I had lost a lot of blood during the birth. As I held my baby boy for the first time, I got to see him smile and imagined what kind of man he would be and how proud I was of Himayuro Thinayuro I died," Naruto said, listening to everything Kushina had to say as she wrapped her arms around him. "I quickly arrived here and got used to the Farplane's navigation, assisting the few individuals who were able to locate this location independently. Then, almost 6 years later, I heard about a blonde boy from the living world coming and I had to see him myself and I'm glad I did," Naruto said, his eyes welling with tears as he listened. "Seeing Naruto, my little baby boy, made me very happy." When Naruto heard these words, he threw his arms around Kushina and cried out, "Ka-san." He did this as tightly as he could, not wanting to let go of the woman for the many nights he cried out for, and Kushina did the same, refusing to let go of her child despite having no other option. As she said, "Naruto Iyayuro, I know this is going to be hard but you have to return to the living world." Kushina swallowed the spit that had accumulated in her throat. Naruto was about to argue, but Kushina interrupted him, saying, "Listen, you have to go back, you're needed there, not here, and I thought I already told you." Kushina grinned, "You shouldn't keep a lady waiting, Naruto-kun." Naruto thought of Hinata and nodded his head in agreement, "Okay Ka-san." Upon hearing Kushina exclaim, "Don't forget Naruto-kun, I expect a lot of grandchildren when I get the chance to visit," Naruto blushed and said, "Ka-san, we're just friends." With a final goodbye, the mother and son were to part ways once more, but at least this time they could say goodbye properly. Kushina maintained a smirk on her face as he walked towards the exit. The center of Lac in Farplane Village. Naruto now found himself floating in the middle of a lake, but as soon as the hymn started, he knew what he had to do. Naruto started the sending dance with the image of Hinata in his head, just like he did during his training, and that kept him going. The shore of a lake. Everyone at the lake was watching the young summoner perform the sending. Things really started to get interesting halfway through the dance, when the torches started to glow a deep blue, which surprised a lot of the kids and teens. Kin was so far impressed by what was happening with Orin and the others. Chiyuya simply glanced at what she saw, thinking it was merely a show with fancy lights. But those quickly changed when a tiny sphere of light started to float by, frightening the redhead. Millions of lights soon appeared, primarily surrounding Naruto and shooting upward into the sky in a clockwise rotation. Before long, lights were streaming in from all sides of the sky. As the tiny lights all started to fly in the direction of the village, this was also taking place with everyone in every village staring up at the sky. The last of the lights had gone out into the night sky after what felt like many hours. Miko and the numerous monks were waiting for Naruto as he made his way to the shore. Before he could say anything, Naruto called out, "valfor." The temple leader was the first to approach, but many retreated when the white charca flowed around him and the bird Eon fell from the sky and landed directly beside him. A large number of the villagers fled in terror. Looking at Naruto, the head monk questioned, "Naruto, sama what?" Naruto's expression remained unchanged as he turned to face the man and said, "Pardon me, but I have something to do." He then climbed onto Valfor's back and turned to face Orin, who merely nodded. With a simple smile, Naruto turned to his friend and said, "Valfor, take me to Konaha." The bird-like creature simply grunted and soared into the sky. One of the many people watching became perplexed and decided to say aloud, "What the fuck was that about?" Hyuga exclaimed. Village of Konaha. Two Chunin were compelled to perform the worst ninja task a euro, guard duty a euro, by standing in front of the gate. As they prepared to drop to their knees and wait for something to happen, the two ninjas simply sighed. The next thing they knew, a Genet bird-like creature was flying in the direction of the village, fulfilling their wish. When the guards saw the demon bird, they exchanged glances and sound the alarm before words, but the demon flew by before the guard could finish. After raising the alarm, the two Chunin started getting ready for combat. Many of the civilians who saw the enormous bird while they were doing this started to flee in terror, fearing that what had happened with the Kyuubi would happen again. Before the academy, in an attempt to make it to class before they were late, 3 girls were running as quickly as they could. One girl, though, abruptly stopped and started staring up at the sky. Sakura turned to see what Ino was doing, then saw Hinata, but one of the girls had to stop and say, "Hey Sakura, hold it." Back to their friend, the 2 girls hurried, saying, "Hey Hinata, come on, we have to go." At first, Hinata remained silent, but she smiled. Sakura and Ino both started to perspire as she turned to face her friends and grinned, saying, "The wind, it's nice today, isn't?" "Yeah, it's nice, Hinata, but we have to get to class." Hinata nodded her head and started to follow, but she felt something approaching from behind. Before she could turn around, a huge bird-like creature flew past her, Ino, and Sakura. Given that the demon bird was returning to them, the 3 girls were in complete awe of what they were witnessing. The demon bird approached and landed directly in front of the 3 girls as they were about to flee, but it was too swift. The demon just stood there staring at the girls, and they had no idea what to do. They heard something leap off the giant bird's back and start to approach them after a brief pause. When the figure in front of her grinned like a fox and said, "Hey Hinata. Hinata simply smiled back and said, "Welcome back Naruto. Running over to give him a tight hug. What they saw made them gasp, especially Hinata. A few months prior, Naruto had returned to Konaha after defeating Valfor. Naruto did run into some issues with the council and the villagers when he returned to the village. But even though these individuals gave Naruto a lot of headaches, he would still prefer to deal with the council than where he is now. Currently, Hyuga Aki was giving birth to her second child while Naruto stood between her legs. Naruto was still following all of his training to ensure that the mother and the child had a successful birth. Nevertheless, Naruto was having a hard time because of some issues with the delivery. Although Aki had gone into labor earlier than expected, she was losing a lot of blood and there wasn't enough of the medication that was meant to ease her pain. The baby was also being corruptive, as if that weren't enough. In contrast to the typical head first presentation, the baby entered the birth canal with the buttocks or feet first because the birth was breech. Naruto wished he was back dealing with the jerks on the council as he collaborated with the other medical specialists. The last time, given that the demon bird was returning to them, the 3 girls were in complete awe of what they were witnessing. The demon bird approached and landed directly in front of the 3 girls as they were about to flee, but it was too swift. The demon just stood there staring at the girls, and they had no idea what to do. They heard something leap off the giant bird's back and start to approach them after a brief pause. When the figure in front of her grinned like a fox and said, "Hey Hinata. Hinata simply smiled back and said, "Welcome back Naruto. Running over to give him a tight hug. What they saw made them gasp, especially Hinata. Hinata was hugging Naruto as Valfor stood beside them, making a pouring sound as it reveled in the cuteness she was witnessing. Hinata blushed slightly as she held onto her friend and listened to his heartbeat. While being held by his friend, Naruto just stood there with a silly smile and a slight flush. As all of this was going on, Ino and Sakura were occupied with their own interests, gazing at Valfor and appreciating her beauty. Both Naruto and Hinata eventually returned to Earth and separated from their embrace, their faces flushed deeply. Sakura and Ino's laughter at their blushing friends didn't help either. The girls, especially Hinata, grinned when Naruto finally overcame his embarrassment and said, "It's good to see you 3 again, I've missed all of you." Valfor, on the other hand, nudged Naruto, indicating that she disliked being ignored. Hinata, Chan, Ino. Chan, Sakura. Chan, this is Valfor, the Eon of the Wind. Valfor, these are my friends and they're very pleased to meet you. Valfor looked at the young girls in front of her and bowed her head in respect. The blonde laughed in embarrassment at forgetting his feathered friend. The girls looked carefully at the creature before them as she did this. Since discovering she was a summoner herself, Hinata had been seeing more bizarre things in her dreams, so she had no problem with the enormous bird. Even though Sakura was intimidated by the enormous bird in front of her, she still had faith in Naruto. Ino, on the other hand, was enamored with what she was witnessing and desired to get as close as possible, possibly even ridding it. The children were too preoccupied with their small reunion to notice the sizable crowd of villagers beginning to assemble around them. Naruto could still see the rage and hatred they felt for him when he left the village by looking into their eyes. He figured they would at least try to change their minds about him after enough time had passed and his status as a summoner had been announced. Unfortunately, that was not the case, as a jerk of a villager yelled, "The demon has returned and has brought a demon bird with him." As they started to close in on Naruto and the girls, many of the other villagers began yelling similar things. Now that he had trained with Orin, Naruto was fairly proficient with his sword and could protect himself if necessary, but he couldn't let the girls get caught in the middle of a fight if he did. Thus, after considering his options, Naruto decided to use his least preferred strategy, retreat. When Valfor lowered her back and led Naruto board, he turned to face her, who could see what he was planning. Naruto gestured for them to get on while glancing at the girls, and they complied. Valfor spread her wings and flew off the ground just as a villager was ready to stab her, giving the three girls second thoughts as they clung to the enormous bird. Valfor saw that some of her passengers weren't particularly appreciative of being in the air as she started to fly away from the irate crowd. It was a little annoying that Sakura and Ino were both clinging to her feathers so firmly. Being in the air didn't seem to bother Naruto, and he even seemed to enjoy laughing with the young girl sitting next to him. Tower of Hokage. The Sandaime Hokage was working in his office at the Hokage Sarutobi Hiruzen's tower, completing an abnormally high volume of paperwork. He had everything planned and arranged, and if he worked continuously, he could finish his paperwork by dusk and go to bed at night. Enjoying the slight breeze, he started reading the first of many papers. Up until the sudden increase in wind caused what appeared to be a large bird or other creature to fly from one window to the next, scattering the papers all over the place. Sarutobi started crying when he saw the mess all around him and realized how much more work he still had to do. With the others, including Naruto, they finally returned to the ground and landed directly on top of the Yondaime head after spending a few minutes in the air having the time of their lives. While Ino appeared a little anxious and Sakura appeared a little pale, Naruto and Hinata both had broad smiles on their faces as they slid off the back of the flying Eon. In order to express his gratitude for everything that Vale had done for him and his friends, Naruto stood by her and rubbed the feathers on her neck. The girls simply stared at their friend with the blonde hair with a newfound sense of wonder and amazement at what he had accomplished while he was doing this. They thought he would be a little stronger when he returned from his trip a few months ago, and he might have picked up a few tricks along the way. They never thought he would return on a gigantic bird. Sakura and Ino, both seeking answers, exchanged glances before turning to Hinata with a malevolent expression that caused the young hyuga to recoil in terror. Hinata turned red as the two pulled her away from Naruto and started whispering something to her. Hinata appeared to be about to protest, but Ino and Sakura said something that made her blush even more as she turned to return to Naruto. Hinata looked at her blonde friend nervously, pocking her fingers in a cute way, and said, Naruto-kun, could you tell us about your training and your adventures while you were away? To be honest, Hinata didn't want this. Although she wanted to know what happened with her friend, she felt that it was improper to just pry into what would be considered private and to force Naruto to tell about it. Her friends disagreed, believing that she was too bad for them. Rewind. The young hyuga wanted to object when Ino and Sakura were talking to Hinata about their plan, but she saw the evil smile on their lips and said, "You want to know just as badly as we do, Hinata. Chan, and you're a lot closer to him than us, so he will talk to you." Hinata blushed at the implication that Ino was applying when she said, "closer," in an odd way, and she would have reprimanded her, but Sakura continued, "And if not still not connived, then you should know that you need a better place to hide your diary, Hinata. Chan, you perv." Hinata's mouth hung open as she turned a deeper shade of red. With no other option, she went to her blonde friend in the hopes that he wouldn't be upset with her for interrupting. He and Naruto were caressing the soft feathers of his Eon blade while she reveled in the attention she was receiving when he saw Hinata approaching him again with a nervous expression on her face. He was a little put out by the sly smiles when he looked back at Ino and Sakura. He wondered what they had said that made Hinata blush and shake his belief that girls were strange. Ino and Sakura were watching the show in front of them and having a little fun while this was happening. At times, Ino would laugh at how adorable the two in front of her were. Sakura, on the other hand, appeared somewhat worried about what she had just done. "Do you think we went too far?" Ino asked, looking at her friend with the pink hair. "Not a chance, the only thing wrong here is that we don't have any popcorn for the show." Sakura started to perspire when she heard this. Back with the young couple, Hinata stood in front of Naruto, staring at the blonde while doing her finger thing, unable to think of anything to say. While he was thinking about how adorable Hinata's finger gesture was, Naruto simply waited for her to say or do something. Hinata saw the bandages covering Naruto's hands when she eventually found the right words to say. Hinata was about to say something else when she noticed Naruto's hand injuries, but she stopped when she saw the bandages covering her friend's hands. Naruto tried to hide both of his hands behind his back in a futile attempt to avoid being questioned about them after hearing her gasp and realizing that she was looking directly at his wound. Unfortunately for Naruto, he was friends with a girl who simply couldn't ignore a serious injury like his without demanding to know. "Naruto-kun, what happened to your hands?" Naruto didn't initially respond, and he even avoided making eye contact. Hinata could see that he didn't want to discuss it, and she knew that even though she desperately wanted to respect that, she had to know what had happened. "Naruto, a euro please, tell me what happened to your hands, a euro please," Hinata said, taking a deep breath, grabbing both hands, and placing them with her own. Naruto knew Hinata expected a truthful explanation of what transpired, and he couldn't bring himself to lie to her after hearing the pleading tone in her voice. In addition, he didn't want to lie and end his friendship with Hinata, but he also didn't want her to constantly be concerned about his welfare. After considering his options, Naruto chose to inform her of what had happened in Suna in the hopes that she would accept it. In order to hear what happened, he instructed everyone to assemble around him while he sat on the ground. Chambers of the council, like any other society, Konaha was governed by a system of government to ensure its smooth operation. The village of Konaha was governed by three main authorities who ensured its smooth and prosperous operation. The civilian council was the first authority. The purpose of the civilian council was to maintain peace for the village's non-shinobi residents. They were tasked with maintaining order among merchants, owners of significant businesses, and financial institutions, among others. The civilian council's members were well-respected individuals who were elected to their positions and had experience managing finances. Even those who were officially shinobi but were compelled to retire for various reasons still desired to make contributions to their homes. The Shinobi Council was the second power. The purpose of the Shinobi Council was to maintain order for activities related to shinobi. They were tasked with determining the shinobi's methods of operation, which nations to trade with, whom to monitor, and even when to launch an attack in the event of a conflict. The heads of both major and minor shinobi clans comprised the members of the Shinobi Council. On the other hand, some members were full-fledged shinobi who had survived a great deal of time and experience in the field. As the village's leader, the Hokage held the third and last power. The Hokage possessed the greatest of the three powers. It was impossible to make any significant decisions without the Hokage's consent. Indeed, the other two council members could send a small group of shinobi to a disturbance in the nearby towns or organize trade with a village on the outskirts of Fire Country. However, in order to prevent the two groups from gaining too much power, they were unable to order an ambush squad to spy on a hostile village or to assassinate a powerful daimyo. Unfortunately, the civilians didn't seem to agree with that, as they recently made every effort to be involved in everything that happened in the village. They began cutting a lot of money for their own projects, claiming that it shouldn't be wasted on pointless things like the orphanage and the reconstruction of the village walls. They also raised the cost of all shinobi equipment. They also took a stance on who should pass and when, as well as how the academy graduation system operated. By buying off the teachers to let some kids get away with it, they thought that even with weak shinobi, they would still be regarded as the strongest village. The amount of illegal goods that were permitted entry into the village was also a result of the people's greed for money and their inability to recognize the poison that was contaminating the rest of the community. Since the Yondaimi's death, the more power-hungry civilians have been able to seize almost everything. Before anything could be done to stop them, they had already created a situation in which they could easily endanger the village in the event of an emergency. Since the shinobi were powerless to stop the tyrants on the council, they chose to play with their arrogance until they made a mistake and were overthrown, allowing the village to begin thriving once more. Given that the civilian council has been taking on more than they can handle and has barely been able to hide their tracks, that opportunity may be coming soon. They would eventually do something foolish that would make them a real threat to the village, forcing Sarutobi to expel them. The meeting had formally started as Sarutobi took his seat in the council room. The civilians started the meeting with what they believed to be the utmost impertinence regarding the sightings of the demon child returning and destroying a demon bird of some kind after realizing the Hokage was present. The return of the small monster was unquestionably retaliation for its defeat a few years prior, when it killed the Yondaime. They believed that the demon had clearly returned to the village, regained its evil power, and was now returning with a demon bird and possibly an army to begin wreaking havoc on the defenseless bystanders who stood in its way. The council could now expose the Hokage's error in allowing the monster to survive and appoint a more qualified individual to take charge of the village. Masao Koji, the fat and conceited civilian speaker, had been raised as a spoiled child and had never even seen a battlefield or been in combat. Despite this, he felt he understood the ways of a shinobi completely, which is why he was permitted to serve as the official spokesperson. They shared Koji's belief that the civilians would be able to expel the demon and have everything they needed to govern Konaha as they saw fit. Thanks to higher taxes on the general public, Koji was able to afford the finest and most expensive kimono and jewelry, which he wore as he stood in front of the entire council. It was inconceivable to him that he should have to spend his own hard-earned money when he could simply obtain it from the common people. Koji cleared his throat and started his speech by saying, "Hokage-sama, my fellow council members, it has come to my attention that a great threat has returned to our beloved village and action must be taken." Many shinobi thought the same thing when they heard this. What is that fat fuck bitching about now? The civilians were pretending to be unaware of what Koji was saying while the shinobi were thinking this. Koji said, "It has been brought to my and a few others' attention that Uzumaki Naruto has been seen in the village." At this point, Sarutobi and the other shinobi members began to pay attention to the fat-ass windbag as he continued, saying, "The boy knows Naruto dispersed without a trace a few months ago to unknown location without the informing anyone where he was going and not waiting to be granted cleared from the council to be allowed to leave and was not marked as a missing nin." Many of the non-civilian members looked at each other wondering, since when did someone who wasn't a shinobi need permission to leave the village and since when did the civilian council need to be informed of such things at all? Koji keeps speaking. "It has been brought to the attention of this council that we believe that the boy has most likely gone towards an enemy village to divulge secrets and point out weakness that could lead to an invasion by our enemies." Hearing this, all of civilian members started nodded their heads in agreement, while the shinobi members and Sarutobi just looked at them as if they were joking about a child know a real secker test about the village. However, to their disbelief the man was actually serious. Koji looking around seeing his fellow civilians were following his every word like puppets and that the shinobi just sat there looking at him and not saying anything until Inuzuka Sume opened her mouth and bluntly responded, "Are you fucking joking or are you really fucking stupid?" Koji was enraged by the Inuzuka bitch's response, but he maintained his composure because he needed to win over the other members of the council. He turned to the head of the Inuzuka clan and grinned, saying, "Sume-san, I assure you that this is no joking matter. The demon child has returned to our village and has even brought a demonic bird with him. The first of perhaps many. We must take action before it's too late to stop that monster before it's too late." Sarutobi glared at the man in front of him, saying, "Koji-san, I would advise you to watch what you say." Koji heard the Hokage threat and scoffed at the man's audacity, shocking both Sarutobi and the shinobi council. Sarutobi, however, didn't show any signs of surprise or even flinch at Koji's words. Instead, he asked, "What did you say, Masao-san?" Koji looked directly into Sarutobi's eye and said, "Shut up, you old fuck." The entire council room fell silent at what they had just heard the head of the civilian council say to the strongest man in the village. A Euro, not even the haughty Uchiha were foolish enough to do such a thing. "Isahida Euro shoot a Euro oop a Euro you a Euro old a Euro fuck," Koji said with a smug smile. "What are you going deaf, you pathetic worthless old monkey? I thought I told you to keep your mouth shut, damn it." Koji's voice was now clearly annoyed. "You listen here, you damn old fart. I like many others are sick of you ordering us around like you actually have the right to do so or the power to do it," Koji thought, assuming he already knew everything that was happening. For a long time, Nobody spoke or made any noise at all, and nearly everyone was too stunned to do anything or knew what to think. You and the damn shinobi are nothing more than dogs who have been trained to bite when we give the order. We, the civilians, are the real owners of this village. Regarding that young demon brat, we are not as pitiful as you are. You are naive enough to think that a demon is a boy, even though it isn't human. That thing is clearly trying to blend in by acting human. In fact, when I took a few shots at it on one of its birthdays, I nearly thought it was human. There were many gasps at this, including from civilians who thought Koji was giving away too much and ought to stop before he did something really unfortunate. Despite the outraged expression on her face, Sume couldn't help but feel guilty for being somewhat like this idiot when it came to Naruto and not wanting to get involved. Before anyone could intervene, she slammed her fist on the table and yelled, "You bastard, you to tell us you actually took part in those beating that nearly led to his death." She wouldn't have given the blonde-haired child a second thought or even batted an eye toward him unless she was told to before her son made friends with the boy. But after learning about the kid from Kiba, she realized that he was just a regular kid with no one to turn to. It also helped her realize that she was behaving no better than the jerk civilians who were beating the kid to within an inch of his life in front of her. Koji was not pleased at all by the outburst from Inuzuka. He didn't respect the woman at all because he thought that, given how miserable the shinobi were, she should have known her place in the big picture and, like the other members of the bastardized clan, should have known when to obey. Because it was so faint and hardly perceptible, no one really noticed when Koji used his best glare and his maximum amount of killer intent. With a leering smile, he approached the Inuzuka woman, took her by the chest, and said, "Why don't you keep your mouth shut, bitch? A dog should only bark when instructed to do so. Now, be a good little girl, and I'll give you a special treat later. Hell, I even let your daughter join in on the fun." Following this brief remark, Sarutobi decided that enough was enough and inhaled deeply, drawing Koji's attention and causing him to become irritated. Thus, Koji returned to Sarutobi's face, still displaying his haughtiness, and slapped him in the face of the shinobi god, saying, "Did I say you could speak, you worthless worm?" Koji turned to face the other shinobi in the room and said, "You call I'll learn a thing or two from this old fool." This was his final act of superiority or the final nail in his coffin as he pointed his index finger directly at Sarutobi to make fun of his weakest. When he saw that Sarutobi did nothing, he let the saliva fall down his face, which only served to increase his arrogance. He went on, "I didn't think so, you pathetic fool. It's like you have finally come to terms with your proper place in this world." Sarutobi had had enough of Koji's misguided behavior. He had reached his breaking point from all the bullshit the civilian council had given him over the years, and he was going to show the haughty person who actually ran the village the sack of shit. Sarutobi grabbed for Koji's index finger as soon as it was in his face, and before anyone could see anything, there was a loud cracking sound. When they saw that Koji's finger was now broken in half, everyone turned to stare and gasped. Before he could even scream, Sarutobi pulled hard on the broken finger and tore it off the hand. Koji screamed loudly and painfully after Sarutobi because he had lost his torn finger. Holding it tightly, he glared at Sarutobi, trying to summon all the killer intent he could muster. "You bastard, a euro, look what you, old fuck." Sarutobi did nothing but throw the severed finger back at the yelling man, who continued to stare at him despite his injury, saying, "You senile fool, this is just the proof that we need to show that you can no longer be the Hokage and that said position cannot be held by a worthless shinobi." Many people in the room gasp as they try to determine if the man has gone insane from the pain or if he was making a valiant attempt to stage a coup and has failed miserably. Sarutobi chose to take advantage of this man's folly in order to eliminate any other people who were assisting him. Sarutobi was regarded as a professor among the shinobi because he saw this as an opportunity to finally have a reason to permanently remove the civilians from the council. Koji-san, "I'm afraid my hearing isn't what it used to be with my old age, could you repeat yourself?" he said. When the council heard this, they all turned to the Hokage as though he were making a joke about someone being so foolish as to incriminate themselves in front of a large gathering of people. "I said that you are no longer what we need for a Hokage and need to be replaced with someone of your choosing, not some shinobi dog who follow that will of fire trash." After hearing this, Sarutobi started to clench his fingers at the man, mocking his late sensei's philosophy. "That's right, we the civilians feel that a shinobi, who is nothing more than a tool of war, has no place as the leader of the village. Therefore, as leader of the civilian council, we order you to stand down immediately." Everyone stared at the man as though he were insane, and even the council members behind him were now reconsidering their decision to support the lunatic. Koji-san, I have one more thing to ask. Are all the members of the civilian council behind you in this? Sarutobi asked, realizing that he was at his breaking point and that the blood he was suffering was also helping. Before anyone could react and try to stop him, Koji said, that's right, we are all in this and we already have someone who would make a greater Hokage than any shinobi possibly could. Sarutobi grinned, thinking that this was all he needed. All right then, Anbu. Suddenly, a number of black-clad shinobi wearing various animal masks materialized behind each civilian council member. The group's leader, a kunoichi in a cat mask, said, your orders, Hokage-sama. Sarutobi then said, in a tone that many had not heard since the last shinobi war, take each former member of the civilian council to integration on the crimes of treason and attempting a coup. The cat mask Anbu simply nodded, by your order, Hokage-sama. Unfortunately, some council members were unable to take the hint, so Koji chose to make matters worse for himself, saying, this is an outrage, you can't do this to us, we own this village, we own you, you can't do to us, we are your masters. Weary of listening to this loudmouth idiot, another purple-haired Anbu member wearing a snake mask punched Koji in the jaw, knocking him unconscious and permanently silencing him. Glancing at the youthful kunoichi, Sarutobi grinned, pleased that he had decided to make some shinobi Anbu behind the council's backs. For instance, the kunoichi in front of him was unofficially a full Anbu member with allegiances to the Hokage first and the village second, but officially she was only a special Junin because of her previous ties to her Nin sensei. The snake Anbu looked at the Hokage to see if he was kidding, but when she realized he was serious, she squealed like a little schoolgirl and gave a huge grin behind her mask. Arigato Hokage-sama, she said before using Shunshin no Jutsu to leave. Sarutobi decided that this was the best way to give the girl an early charisma's gift. Hubby-san, I'm also allowing the use of the black files for as long as you like. The Hokage's statement that, the black files are integration techniques that have been labeled forbidden in every shinobi village and are to be used only for the highest of crimes, left everyone perplexed. Knowing how much the snake Anbu loved her work, everyone shuddered at the thought of anyone working in the interrogation department being permitted to use such techniques. After everything was resolved, Sarutobi left the room, leaving some of the members to inquire, where are you going, Hokage-sama? The village's ancient leader simply grinned and said, to pay a grandson of mine a visit. With the others, including Naruto. Back with Naruto and the girls, the blonde-haired summoner had just finished telling everyone what had happened to him in Suna, and each person's reaction was different. Sakura was appalled that someone like Yashamaru would attempt to kill his own nephew for an unjustifiable reason, and she was a little doubtful of the Far plan. Ino was awed by the history of the previous summoners, a little worried about these fallen eons and this sin thing, and she also wanted to meet Naruto's new friends. Hinata, on the other hand, wasn't sure whether she should be proud of Naruto for everything he had done, angry at his recklessness, or delighted that Naruto had met his mother. Before she could respond, there was a background sound of two hands clapping. The kids turned to see who had joined them and saw the Sarutobi smiling and saying, good to see you Naruto-kun, how have you been? Each girl bowed to the village leader in a show of respect, but Naruto did not. Instead, he had an expression that seemed to be anger on his face. When Sarutobi saw this look, he became a little uneasy because the blonde approached too slowly. When Naruto eventually arrived at the elderly Hokage, he avoided making eye contact and said, Heiji-san, I learned something important on my pilgrimage, would you like to hear it? Sarutobi was a little frightened by Naruto's hauntingly lovely voice as the blonde went on, I visited a very special place called the Farplane on my pilgrimage. Have you heard of it? Since he hadn't heard the phrase, the Farplane is the land of the dead, G-san, and while I was there I met a very nice lady with red hair and who was really good with a sword. In a long time, Sarutobi had to think when he heard the name Farplane. Suddenly, everything made sense, and before he could respond, Naruto looked him in the eye and said, the woman name was Uzumaki Kushina, my ka-san, why didn't you ever tell me damn it? As much as Naruto wanted to yell bullshit, he knew he couldn't. Yet, you could have at least given me something, at least a name would have been nice, or at least no one of their names would have been nice. Sarutobi sighed, knowing that denying it would only lead to more issues between the boy and Naruto. Naruto Ayuro, if you know who your parents are then you know that they both had many enemies both inside and outside the village. Naruto nodded at his realization that he couldn't deny it, Also, if said enemies realized who you were and your life would have been a lot worse. Naruto pondered whether he should truly pardon the elderly man in front of him as he stood there. He was angry that he was kept in the dark, even though he knew that the old man only acted in what he believed to be his best interests. But he really didn't want to break off any kind of relationship with the man in front of him because he was the closest thing to family he had ever known. As Naruto was considering valfor, he became weary of the boy's obstinacy and chose to give him a firm shove to get him to decide. When valfor pushed him hard and forced his hand, Naruto realized she was trying to make a point. The Hokage grinned at Blonde's response, relieved that the boy in front of him didn't despise him, and leaned down to embrace him. Naruto sighed as he made his choice, as if I could stay mad at Yuji-san. He glanced at the Genet bird and silently thanked it, to which the bird nodded its head in agreement. Unfortunately for Sarutobi, he did not notice Naruto's hands passing through his robes and grabbing his wallet while he was doing this. The young blonde was determined to exact revenge by using the Hokage's own money to eat as much ramen as possible. Village streets. Following Naruto's dismissal of valfor and suggestion that they grab some ramen, the group left the Hokage monument and started to walk through the village. Sarutobi asked Naruto, "Naruto, where is your guardian?" As they were making their way to Naruto's favorite ramen stand, Naruto turned completely white and began to shake a little, frightening the people around him into thinking he was a ghost. Then there was a boisterous, "Oh crap, I left them behind." Hinata attempted to reassure the blonde when he showed signs of nervousness, saying, "It's okay, Naruto, I'm sure they will understand." Naruto turned to face his friend, still terrified, and said, "Not with Tayuya, nothing I say or do will get me off the hook, and when she finds me she's going to kill." It was a poor choice of words for Naruto. Damn fucking right, I going to fucking kill, you fucking little shit. Naruto turned to face the source of the voice, and was horrified to see a red-faced Tayuya with a murderous expression that could only be seen in a predator's eyes before they kill. The red head in front of him was creaking her knuckles loudly, so Naruto backed away slowly. "Any last words, fucker?" he asked in a squeaky voice. "Mercy." His response was a rather painful pouch to the face. "No fucking way, asshole," Tayuga yelled. Everyone else watched as the blonde took his beating, obviously wanting to help him but being too scared of Tayuya to take any action. As Orin and Kim approached from behind and witnessed his student being beaten, they simply sat back and watched the performance, hoping Tayuya hadn't killed him. Kim knew that was the best way for Tayuya to vent, but she still wanted to go up to her friend. Given that this might take some time, Kim made the decision to approach Naruto's other friends and ask if they would be interested in her. Thus, Kim, the group's friendliest looking member, chose to greet everyone with a, "Hello, my name is Kin, the Summoner of Trust, it's nice to meet you," and a polite bow. She bowed as she said, "Nice to meet you, I'm Hyuga Hinata, the Summoner of Death." The person she was speaking to also smiled. Kin smiled politely, knowing that this girl would like it, but then there was a loud scream and some blood on the floor. "Umayuro, your friend isn't going to kill Naruto-kun, is she?" Hinata asked, looking at Kin anxiously. This made Hinata a little less worried, but she was still a little worried for her friend. Kin glanced back at the puddle that had once been Naruto and smiled reassuringly, saying, "Of course not, Naruto will be just fine," but thinking, "I hope so anyway." Eventually, Tayuya stopped beating Naruto, went to Hinata's and the other girl's house, and introduced herself. "Tayuya, now who the fuck are you?" Hinata and the other girls gasped, having never heard such language before, but they chose not to commit to it after seeing the puddle Naruto had turned into. "I'm Hyuga Hinata, this is Sakura and Ino," the two said, waving, not wanting to approach the odd red head. Everyone in that room blushed when they heard Tayuya smirk and say, "So you're the little white-eyed girl this blonde dipshit is always having wet dreams about." Naruto denied everything. Tayuya laughed and swung her arm around Hinata after Hinata blushed. "I think you and I are going to get along, just fine, Hinata. Chan," Tayuya said, and Hinata simply nodded her head. "So why don't you show me and Kin around this village?" They all started to leave as Naruto, an anime character, sobbed as he lay on the ground, saying, "No fair, so was supposed to be my homecoming."
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.